is the biggest audience we've had in a while. Count me. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our monthly meeting of the Cobb County Board of Zoning Appeals. At this time, I would like to ask everyone who can to please stand and pledge allegiance. We will now call the meeting to order. Thank you. Please, if you have not already, please silence your cell phones. For those of you who do not have a copy of the agenda or who are attending for the first time, we will concern ourselves with cases that are on consent. These are cases that have been reviewed by the board and by the professionals here at the county, and to which there's no known opposition at this time. We've discussed these in our work session. Certain staff comments and stipulations have been made, and we do not anticipate any further discussion is needed for a decision. I'm still too soft. Take the volume up a little bit for me. So as we go forward, the county zoning manager, Mr. Peterson, will read each case into the record. Mr. Peterson will ask you to raise your hand when your case is called to signify you are present. If you are here in opposition to a case that is currently on consent, Mr. Peterson will ask you to identify yourself as that case is read into the record. We will then pull that case off consent and hear it as part of our regular case agenda. We will then vote on all the cases still on consent at one time. Once we have approved the cases on consent, we will move to our regular case agenda. With that, we're ready to review the consent cases. It's all yours, Mr. Peterson.
Thank you. And before we get going on consent, I do have 2 or 3 pieces of business to take care of before then. There is one case on today's printed agenda which has been withdrawn without prejudice. In this case, will not be heard today. That's variance case of V108, John Charles Crenshaw and James Andrew Crenshaw. This case has been withdrawn without prejudice, will not be heard today. Additionally, Madam Chair and Board, I did get 2 requests to continue cases late in the process. First one is variance case V110, Pulte Home Company, LLC. The applicant did send in a request last night to continue this case so they can work on their proposal a little bit. And he is present if you would like to ask me any questions about it.
John, I discussed that with the applicant, and I think what we're going to do is to hear, and I'll recommend holding it at the end so the parties can have a chance. But in that way, we can maybe get any objections on the record and figure out get some direction as to how to proceed.
Okay. And then the second one, I got a request this morning from the applicant for variance case V111, James M. Croy Jr. He is asking this case be continued so he can review some late filings from an adjoining neighbor.
I actually think that we would like to hear this case, V111, because I believe that there's opposition here also.
All right, thank you. All right, last thing I have for the Board of Zoning Appeals is there's one case on today's agenda which was continued into your November 15th, 2023 hearing. And that was variance case of V98, Olabi Adola. This case was continued regarding a fence issue, but he submitted a request yesterday to withdraw this case without prejudice. So I'd ask the Board of Zoning Appeals to consider his request and just allow him to withdraw the request without prejudice.
Mr. Johnson, do we need to take any formal action on all these matters?
Yeah, for the record, please.
Okay.
For the clerk. Yes.
Okay. So, Mr. Peterson, go over those case numbers again, please.
Pardon me?
The ones that needs to be withdrawn, and we need to
Well,
make a motion.
the applicant for V98 wishes to be withdrawn without prejudice. So we need a vote from the board.
Okay.
That was Commissioner in District 1.
Motion to allow withdrawal without prejudice.
Second.
All right, place your votes, please. Motion passes 5-0.
Okay. Cobb County Board of Zoning Appeals, variance hearing consent agenda for October 11th, 2023. First case on consent is variance case V99, James Case George IV. Request a variance to allow a fence to be more than 8 feet in height, up to 12 feet in height, in land lots 1192 and 1257 of the 16th district. The property is located on the south side of Sentinel Place. The Board of Zoning Appeals recommends approval, subject to stormwater management comments, with stormwater management reviewing and approving the final plan. Is the applicant present? Let the record show the applicant is here. Is there anyone here opposed? The variance case of V99. One opposed? Okay, so there's one opposed, Madam Chair and Board. So we'll pull that off consent and hear it in its regular order. Two? Okay, let the record show there's 2 people opposed. Off consent. All right. Variance case V100, Enrique Garcia requests a variance to number 1, allow a fence to be more than 8 feet in height, up to 15 feet in height. And number 2, reduce the setback for an accessory structure an accessory use over 850 square feet for an existing 7,200 square foot athletic court from required 100 feet to 36 feet adjacent to the east property line, 90 feet adjacent to the south property line, and the 52 feet adjacent to the west property line in land lot 633 of the 19th district. The property is located at the western terminus of Milford Forest Drive, south of Milford Church Road. The Board of Zoning Appeals recommends approval, subject to number 1, traffic comments, and number 2, site plan review comments. Is the applicant present? Present. Let the record show the applicant is here. Is there anyone here opposed to variance case V100? No. Nope. Okay. Let the record show there's no one opposed. Variance case V103, Juan Hernandez requests a variance to number 1, allow 2 accessory structures to be located in front of the principal building, an existing approximately 144 square foot wood shed, and an existing approximately 352 square foot wood garage. And number 2, allow parking and/or maneuvering on a non-hardened and treated surface, which is a gravel driveway, in land lot 121 of the 20th district. The property is located on the south side of McClure Road, east of Mars Hill Church Road. The Board of Zoning Appeals recommends approval, subject to traffic comments. Is the applicant present? Let the record show the applicant is here. Is there anyone here opposed to variance case V103? No. Okay. Let the record show there's no one opposed. Variance case V104, Charles Matthews requests a variance to number 1, reduce the rear setback from required 30 feet to 17 feet, and number 2, reduce the front setback from required 15 feet per previous variance of V301 of 1985 to 13 feet, which is existing, in land lot 23 of the 20th district. The property is located on the south side of Crescent Hill Drive, southwest of Hickory Run Court. The Board of Zoning Appeals recommends approval. Is the applicant present? Let the record show the applicant is here. Is there anyone here opposed to the variance case V104? No. Let the record show there's no one opposed. Variance case V105, Josie Levitt and Cecil Imolinsky request a variance to reduce the side setback for an accessory structure over 650 square feet for a proposed 1,200 square foot detached garage from required 100 feet to 28 feet adjacent to the east property line in land lot 259 of the 20th district. The property is located on the south side of Brigade Trail, west of Ackworth Due West Road. The Board of Zoning Appeals recommends approval, subject to the fire department comments. Is the applicant present? Let the record show the applicant is here. Is there anyone here opposed to variance case V105? No. Let the record show there's no one opposed. Variance case V106, Andrew Martin requests a variance to reduce the front setback from required 50 feet to 13 feet, which is existing, in land lot 237 of the 20th district. The property is located on the west side of Paul Samuels Road, across from Turnwell Place. The Board of Zoning Appeals recommends approval, subject to water and sewer comments. Is the applicant present? Let the record show the applicant is here. Is there anyone here opposed to variance case of V106? Let the record show there's no one opposed. Variance case V107, Capstone Communities request a variance to number 1, allow an accessory structure, which is a chicken coop, to be located in front of the principal building on tract 1. Number 2, reduce the setback for an accessory structure over 650 square feet for an existing approximately 1,000 square foot carport, number 1, for required 100 feet to 60 feet adjacent to the north property line on tract 1. Number 3, allow 3 accessory structures, which are a gazebo and 2 barns, to be located on a lot without a principal building on tract 2. Number 4, allow 2 accessory structures, which is the existing gazebo and 1,533 square foot barn, to be located in front of the principal building on tract number 2. Number 5, allow a second electrical meter on a residential lot for tract 2. And number 6, allow maneuvering on a non-hardened and treated surface, which is gravel, in land lot 299 of the 20th District. The property is located on the north side of Due West Road across from Lost Creek Drive. The Board of Zoning Appeals recommends approval, subject to number 1, traffic comments, number 2, development inspections comments, and number 3, fire department comments. Is the applicant present? Let the record show the applicant is here. Is there anyone here opposed to the variance case of V107? Let the record show there's no one opposed. And last on the agenda is variance case V109. Deanna Bickers requests a variance to allow an accessory structure, which is an existing approximately 100 square foot shed to be located in front of the principal building in land lot 36 of the 20th District. The property is located on the north side of Autry Church Road, east of Cobb Parkway. The Board of Zoning Appeals recommends approval. Is the applicant present? Let the record show the applicant is here. Is there anyone here opposed to variance case of V109? Let the record show there's no one opposed. And Madam Chair and Board, I believe Commissioner Boulogne wanted to make some remarks regarding that case.
Thank you. If it would be appropriate, could we just get the applicant up for a couple of quick questions?
Sure.
So welcome back. We previously approved a variance on this property, right?
Yes, sir.
And my understanding is the reason you're here today is because you needed an additional variance to proceed with the lot split that was required as a condition of the previous variance. Is that correct?
Correct.
And you're going to go ahead and proceed with the lot split if and when we grant this variance?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other concerns that we need to address?
I just have a question. Fred, do we want to put a time, because it's exceeded the time that we had put back in January, do you want to put another timeline when the lot split would take place?
Okay. Can we put a time estimate on this?
Fine with us.
Would 60 days be sufficient to get this done?
No, I think you need longer than that, don't you?
It may take longer than that. I don't know what the water department's schedule is about trying to get another meter. That's the only thing that we haven't checked off our list. We've talked to everyone else that I'm aware of.
Would there be any need for another meter, Mr. Peterson, for them to get a lot split?
It would need another meter since it's a separate lot now. Because right now the water being running off the meter from the main house.
All right, but would that hold up getting a lot split filed for any reason?
It wouldn't hold up zoning wise, and they've already submitted to us for the lot split.
Okay.
And you're here today because of our comments.
So that's good to go, right? That'll be good to go right now if we approve this variance, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so that having been established, is there anything else we need to move forward there?
We've talked with the fire marshal, and all of that criteria is met. I believe we covered all the bases except for that water meter, but we need to make sure we're going to get through this today.
Okay, all right. So the only other stipulation I would wish to place on that then would be that they get the lot split plan filed within 60 days. But it sounds like you already have it, right?
I have.
Okay. Thank you for coming up. We're good. We're good on that.
Okay, thank you.
And Madam Chair, I'll go ahead and make a motion that we approve the consent agenda as amended by the deletion of the cases where there was opposition. And I'd also like to offer one more amendment regarding V107, that in addition to the stated comments that the barn could not be used as a separate residence. That would be one additional condition.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Any other comments or questions? All right, please place your votes. Thank you. The consent agenda has been approved. Moving on now to our regular agenda.
Okay, and all those folks that were on the consent agenda, except for V99, you're free to leave. Thank you. Okay, moving into the continued and held case. Variance case V91, Jake Anthony Strange requested variance to reduce the setbacks for an accessory structure.
Excuse me, Mr. Peterson, since we may have some new people here, I think we need to explain the public hearing portion just to be sure everybody understands that.
Okay.
Time limit. All right. We're now going into our regular case agenda, as Mr. Peterson referenced, and he will read the case into the record. The applicant and/or the representatives of the applicant who wishes to speak will be asked to come forward to be sworn in. Likewise, anyone to speak in opposition will be asked to come in and be sworn in as well. Both the applicant and the opposition will have 10 minutes each to present their case. All testimony will be made from the podium to my right, and testimony will be followed by questions from the board and may be directed to either party. Just a reminder, once comments from all parties related to the case have concluded, the public hearing will be closed, and there can be no further comment from the parties involved unless requested by a member of the board, at which point you'll be asked to return to the podium. Okay. Now, Mr. Peterson.
Okay, variance V91, Jake Anthony Strange requests a variance to reduce the setbacks for an accessory structure over 650 square feet for a proposed 1,080 square foot building from required 100 feet to 10 feet adjacent to the west property line, 35 feet adjacent to the south property line, and 50 feet adjacent to the east property line in land lot 790 of the 17th district. The property is located on the south side of Paris Ferry Road, east of Sun Valley Drive. Is the applicant present? Is the applicant here for V91, Jake Anthony Strange? Is there anyone here opposed to variance case V91? Madam Chair and Board, the applicant is not present, and there's no one opposed.
Then take action on that case individually before we go into the rest of the standard agenda.
You want to try to call them first?
I will say that not knowing where they're coming from, one of the options of me to get here was like 3 times the normal drive time. So,
Okay,
Do we
well,
wanna
let's
just
put this one on hold right
hold,
now. We'll
yeah.
give them a call and come back to that for the very last case.
okay, that works. Thank you.
All right, going into the regular cases. First case is variance case V99, James Case George IV. Request a variance to allow a fence to be more than 8 feet in height, up to 12 feet in height, in land lots 1192 and 1257 of the 16th district. The property is located on the south side of Sentinel Place. Is the applicant present? Let the record show the applicant is here. And earlier, there were 2 people here opposed to the case. All those who wish to address the board, please come forward to be sworn in.
Hey, good afternoon.
Good
Madam
afternoon.
Chair, Madam Chair, I will be keeping time, again, since our timer is not working, and I will give the presenter and/or opposition a minute warning
Okay.
when we get to that point.
All right, thank you. Please state your name.
James Case George IV.
Thank you.
Begin.
Go ahead.
So a few months ago, I was looking to replace a privacy fence along the property line between my house and my neighbor's. Privacy fence provided privacy for both pools. So I have a pool on my property, my neighbor has a pool on his property. The fence was, as I found out later, out of code. It was almost 10 feet high. It was falling down, and so we decided to replace it. When I talked to the contractor about replacing the fence, he said, I noticed you have an erosion problem, right? The water runs, from the other side of the street down. We're probably 30 feet lower than the other side of the street. And so all the water just runs down. He said, I recommend you put in a retaining wall. So 30,000 later, I put in a retaining wall, but the other point of the retaining wall was not only to protect from the erosion on both my neighbor's property and mine, was also to provide access to the backyard, 1, 2, also prevent the new fence from failing, because the previous fence takes on a lot of water, quickly starts to fall over, and therefore we'd have the same problem again. I installed the fence on top of the retaining wall, and I think there are pictures in the file. The retaining wall was permitted, approved by the county. Structural engineer is certified that it meets all code requirements. And I put the fence in there again to protect the fence and also provide privacy. Due to the elevation of the property, it drops down pretty significantly, about 30 feet into the backyard. And from that point, we rose the fence up to, I think it's in the file, 12 feet or thereabouts, to accommodate privacy between the two properties. That privacy runs about 60 feet on what is probably about an 1.5 acre lot line all the way down to Soap Creek. That's really it. And if I may say, that I take special pride in the look of my home and make sure it's aesthetically pleasing for all the neighbors. I would argue that my house is probably the most aesthetically pleasing house in the neighborhood, and we're very conscious of how it looks and does it add property value to our home and our neighbor's home. And so hence we took that in consideration. We built the fence, and it's made out of cedar, has landscape lights. It's very well done. So
Thank you.
thank you.
We had someone in opposition to this case?
Before we start, I was wondering, I have a visual aid, just a photo of the fence. Could I be permitted to put that up here? I also have a packet as well. Would that be acceptable?
Yes.
And then did y'all get the packet? I was wondering, there wasn't a confirmation as such, but I do have packets available, copies for y'all.
Yeah. Well, you need, if you'll first start off by introducing yourself.
Oh, sure.
Tell us the relationship to the case.
Absolutely.
Madam Chair, could we just pause to let him get set up, and before we start timing?
Yes,
No, thank you.
absolutely.
I appreciate that. I don't think I'll go to 10 minutes, but I appreciate that. So, that's the place to put that.
Just, we need to have it for AV, don't we?
I can't,
Oh, I have another picture in the packet.
okay, I can't get that on here.
Oh,
I have a replica in the packet.
Okay.
Here you go. It's the last page. And then, yes, absolutely. There are 5 copies. Would that be enough, or you need 6? Yes. Here you go. Yep, that's it.
All right, now that we got all the AV stuff handled, okay, tell us your name and your relationship to the case.
Sure. My name is Edward Finity. I am the property owner on the easterly adjacent parcel to the applicant.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair and board members, for your time and attention to listen to my response to variance request V99 2023 for 189 Sentinel Place. I wanted to bring your attention to the packet for an overview and timeline. When I moved to the easterly property adjacent to 189 Sentinel Place, now called Subject, in September 2022, the pre-existing condition of the area between the subject property and my property was a grass-covered slope to the east and south of the subject property. Screening was provided by an older wooden fence on subject property running roughly north to south with vegetation, including mature trees, providing additional screening. Improvements to the subject property since at least 2008 have reduced the landscape buffer between the subject property and my property. You can see on the image to the right, there was originally a 1987 garage that was then added on to. There's a 2008 garage addition, which further moved towards the property line. And this year, there were additional structures placed on that red area, which is very close to the approximate property line. Starting in December of last year, the subject property owner began removing existing fence and screening vegetation, including large mature trees. These mature trees were actually quite aesthetically pleasing. They showed just partially the other property, but it was very nice. It was consistent with the neighborhood. There was a nice natural buffer between my property and the subject property. From January 2023 through March 2023, a large retaining wall and parking pad was constructed without any permitting from the county. The completed new retaining wall stands well over 6 feet. As you can see, approximately 5'8", and it's definitely, even for perspective, it's definitely well above 6 feet. The visual impact of this structure is jarring and out of character with the neighborhood. In late March 2023, the subject property owner built a wooden fence on top of and to the south of the retaining wall with a height that reaches at least 14 feet. Without being able to go on subject's property, if you do a rough approximation, actually use me's as equivalents. You can actually put 2 me's and then like at least a half of me at the very height on the left. And so it's well above the 8-foot limit, and it's actually pretty jarring when you look at it, especially from our pool deck and from this part of the yard. It kind of looks like a spite fence. Some people have called it a prison fence. I take issue with him saying that it's part of the most aesthetically pleasing in the neighborhood. I think that's arguable. Taste is subjective, but I do think that this is something that we have to look at, and especially from our pool area, it's kind of hard to miss. It's pretty tall without any sort of vegetation or any sort of mitigation to make it less stark from the natural environment. Going to the next page, on around September 11th, 2023, I received a certified letter from the subject property owner notifying me of a hearing for requested variance to a maximum height of 14 feet. So that's a bit different from what he's claiming, 12 feet. I would like to know what he's actually claiming and what he's saying he wants. 12 feet and 14 feet, I actually think it's 15 or 16 feet. It substantially exceeds the maximum allowed height for such a fence within Cobb County, Georgia. The letter references, strangely, VAR 2023-071, so I don't know if that's an additional. We tried to look it up. That isn't consistent with V99 2023, which is the subject of today's proceeding. Also, another discrepancy that was kind of puzzling is it requested a maximum height feet of 12 feet. It's unclear if the subject owner is seeking 12 feet or 14 feet due to these discrepancies. Again, it's 15 or 16 feet, so it's actually well above what he's claiming. And it adds to just sort of the visual starkness between my property and his property. Per section 134-267, subsection B of the official code of Cobb County, Georgia, height of fences and walls, no fence or freestanding wall, both herein referred to as fence other than retaining wall, shall be more than 8 feet in height or be constructed in public road right-of-way. If a fence is adjacent to a public road right-of-way or is in front of or to the side of the house in a residential district or to the front or to the side of the building in a non-residential district, such fence shall not exceed 6 feet in height and shall further meet the requirements set forth in section 134-263. I did review that section. It's not particularly relevant to today's proceedings. Y'all can obviously reference it if need be. The subject property owner's request of either 12 or 14 feet is substantially in excess of allowable fence height in Cobb County, Georgia. I believe the fence may be higher and is actually at least 15 feet in height. Now, I have watched some of the proceedings on YouTube, and I have known that you don't need a permit to build a fence. I'm fully aware of that. However, to build a fence that is in excess of 6 or 8 feet, depending on the circumstance, you do need a variance. And to have something that's 15 or 16 feet, that's why we're here today. And if there were just mitigations in place, maybe something that could make it less stark of a, dividing line between our properties, I think, that's something that I think any homeowner who really cares about both their property and their views on their property would definitely recommend. I've attached a letter on the right just to substantiate the claims that I've made today. Quickly going over to the second section, the reasons for opposition. First reason, the new structures on the subject property permanently and negatively alter the appearance between subject property and my property include A, the excessive height of subject property's new wooden fence, at least 14 feet south of the new retaining wall, and B, the height of the wooden fence on top of the new retaining wall, at least 12 feet. Again, it's asking you to look at, please see page 9, and that is this photo. Also, per section 134-267, subsection B of the Official Code of Cobb County, Georgia, the required height limitation, which includes posts and ornaments on top of fence, must be met on both sides of fence and measured from the existing grade upon which is erected. I did underline that for emphasis. Since the height of the retaining wall is significantly above the existing grade and is at least 6 feet tall, that 6 feet must be included in the calculation of the allowable height of the fence on top of the new retaining wall. In other words, the maximum height of the retaining wall reduces the allowable height of the wooden fence above it to practically 0 feet. Put another way, at least 6 feet for the retaining wall plus at least an additional 6 feet for the fence equals at least 12 feet in total height, which is not allowable in Cobb County for such a fence absent a variance. Given the topography of the area at issue, with a significant reduction in elevation from north to south, no fence of any reasonable height will fully shield the subject's pool area from view from higher elevations. It's worth to know that his pool is on the opposite side of our property, so it's actually kind of an interesting angle. He'd have to have like a 50-foot fence to fully obscure that. And even to see that, we'd have to be on our upper deck. We're never on our upper deck. We're almost always on the pool deck. It's just not convenient. Our dogs like to do their business on the sides. We basically just, always use that exit. They love pine straw. So we never go up there. If its privacy is an issue, it's interesting because it would be even more comically large or tall in order to accommodate the privacy that he's seeking. The subject property owner has other options for privacy screening, such as vegetation and other code-compliant screening that would not necessitate a variance. And reviewing some of the previous proceedings and also just looking at recent cases, this seems to be something that has been used as a mitigation tool just to make it less oppressive, less stark, less unappealing as far as an artificial barrier between two properties. Lastly, allowing the subject property's excessively tall fence to remain in place may diminish the value of my property by making it less attractive to potential buyers. It may also encourage other excessively tall fences to be constructed in our neighborhood. Our neighborhood does not have an HOA, and approving this variance will set a problematic precedent for the neighborhood as homeowners must rely on the county to enforce reasonable restrictions on property owners. For all the reasons outlined above, this committee should not approve the variance application to allow a fence substantially exceeding the current code requirements. Both the fence south of the retaining wall and the fence on top of the new retaining wall are well above the allowed height maximum for such fences. The fences as currently built are also substantially detract from the value and enjoyment of my property. One thing I would say is that subject property owner, he does have a beautiful house. I don't know if it's the most beautiful house in the neighborhood, but it is very, very attractive. And it's something that I feel like our neighborhood takes pride in our front yards and our buildings.
1 minute.
1 minute warning. And so for us, it's like, I would like to at least figure out a way to make this less jarring. Lastly, I just wanted to bring your attention to this. This was actually before. You can actually see some of the natural screenings, some of these mature trees. It actually is quite a difference between December and today. Okay, I'll do that. And then I'm actually going to allow her to speak really quickly, but thank you for your time and consideration this afternoon.
I
Probably have 30 seconds, but I'm his realtor, broker. I've been a realtor here in Cobb County for 31 years, and I've never seen a fence of this height. I'm also the head of the Architectural Control Committee for my HOA, and I wouldn't even come close to approving something of that nature. He's up against Soap Creek, which is a very natural-looking area, and this is in stark contrast to that. So I wanted to put that on the record.
Thank you. You may be seated.
Thank you.
We've now closed the public hearing on this matter. Questions? If you want. What? Excuse me, sir.
You can take your pictures and things with you as well?
Oh, sure.
Thank you. And could I have the applicant, Mr. George, come up, please? If you could, on this map here that we have, I don't know if you'll be able to do this, but if there's some way that you could help us with your fence height. So how it starts, the height at the top, and then it goes all the way down. I know that as you go down gradually, as the fence height goes down gradually, can you roughly, would this map be able to help you with how this is,
Yeah, so if you
how this
draw-
was built?
If you were to draw a line from the middle of the pool, that's the ending point of the tall fence, and then it goes down to a normal, I think it's 6 feet fence, or 5 feet, whatever the normal.
Can you speak up?
Oh, I'm sorry.
We're having hard
So
hearing.
it's 60 feet from the edge of the house, which takes you to about where the middle of the pool is.
And so the height of the fence is what, including the retaining wall?
Because the lot slopes down pretty quickly. I mean, the height of the fence at the beginning of the house is around 8.5 feet. And then
Does that
it
include the retaining wall?
Yeah, that includes retaining wall.
So it's 8 feet?
And that's from, yes, and that's from my side. But as the elevation dips down, the wall gets taller. So on my neighbor's side of the house, it's taller because of the elevation and the retaining wall, right? And then it's 60 feet, highest points around 12 feet on my side. He says 16. I don't think that's the case, but I don't go on his side of the yard. And then it stops at 60 feet, which is if you draw a line at the pool, that's where it stops, and it goes immediately down to a 5-foot, 6-foot fence.
Do you have a retaining wall that goes all the way down?
No.
So the retaining wall just stops at your pool?
So from the start of the house to the end of the tall fence is 60 feet. That retaining wall represents about half.
And then, can you just give us a little bit of a background as to how this fence was built? The retaining wall, did you go through getting the retaining wall permitted or inspected? Or can you just kind of give me a little bit of the group here, a little bit of a background of how this began?
So the contractor initially said there wouldn't need to be a permit because it was less than 30 inches. I think he was going to backfill the dirt or whatever. The bottom line is the retaining wall ended up being taller than that, which would require a permit. After the wall was built, I went and got a permit. It was since approved. As a part of that permit, it needed to have a structural engineer certify, which they did. It's in the file. And then, of course, the fence, we're out of compliance there, right? Hence why we're here today. And that's why I'm asking for a variance and by the way, the privacy is for us just as much as it is for them. But he's right. I mean, it would have to be a 50-foot fence to keep them from being able to see in our pool. But it does provide privacy for us.
So, on the applicant's side, or not the applicant, the person who is in opposition, is this fence, as it starts at the top of your property and goes down this height, was this to give you privacy from,
So the other important note is, he's absolutely right. There was a nice set of trees that line the property, but in order to get the retaining wall to prevent the erosion, we had to knock down the trees on that side. And therefore, the fence got a little taller as a result. There's still trees there, and we planted some on our side. They're not mature yet. And I'm happy to plant trees on the other side to make it aesthetically pleasing. We've since, that picture you saw, have painted that wall to match the rest of our house. And I'm more than happy to put trees on that side. Matter of fact, I'd like to.
to put trees on,
On the neighbor's side of the wall.
to put it on his property?
Yeah.
To put-
Well, it's actually, it's still our property. We have about 7 feet
Oh, so then.
beyond. Yeah.
This isn't sitting right on the property line?
No, we have 7 more feet. It's in the file as well. We have a certified plat.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions on him?
The only thing that I would like to recommend
So
is,
you can ask him.
what type of trees would you be willing to plant for screening purposes? What would you have in mind?
I'd prefer like a evergreen, like a fern type. But if Teddy wants to tell me, I'll plant them. I don't care. I'd like to have trees over there. We just hadn't gotten around to it.
Okay. And Fred?
Can you just tell me if the creation of the retaining wall was done principally to support the soils that are under your driveway, or what the principal purpose was for the retaining wall?
It was also to provide a path and a pad, parking pad, right? And then the erosion. I wouldn't have, let's be honest, I would not have put that retaining wall in had the contractor not said, hey, I can put another fence up, but it's going to fail too. You have an erosion problem, and I think Teddy would agree with that. We do have an erosion problem because all the water runs down. So this actually mitigates a lot of that. So the retaining wall, I wasn't looking to spend $30,000 on a retaining wall, but if I did, I went ahead and created a pad and took more of my property.
So now this water essentially runs down the inside of your retaining wall
Inside my side of the property, through a main drain, all the way down to the backyard.
Okay. Thank you.
You bet.
I have one more question. So in your packet, you said that you received, and I had difficulty pulling up your packet, so I apologize for this, but you said that you had received approval from your neighbors?
All but this neighbor.
So you, for the person on the other side, the people across the street, you have approval from them?
Anyone contiguous to us, which is even the lot line which runs, so our lot runs almost 2 acres to the back of Soap Creek, and there's property that technically aligns. 2 of those properties are owned now by the county. I sent a letter to the county, and one property touches ours, and he is signed as well. And then I had some other neighbors sign in support of the fence as well.
On this plat that's on the screen, how far does your fence line go down?
Total fence?
Total fence?
I guess about 3/4 of the property.
3/4?
Yeah.
And then it goes across the back?
Goes to right, probably there.
And so the fence at that point is the height?
It's a regular height. Matter of fact, Teddy just put it up. Brand new fence, what, 6 feet?
7.
7 feet. Okay. So he tore down our fence and then put up a new one.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for your time.
You bet.
What's his name? Edward?
That's what I thought I heard. I think I just called Ted.
Edward or Ted? Edward? Yes, please come up. So what we're really discussing here about having an issue of the fence height is that the fence that was placed on top of the retaining wall, then making it up to 12 feet?
12 feet or more.
Okay, well,
I wasn't able to, nor did the code enforcement person actually do a tape measure. He just said it was above code.
So 12, it's up to 12 feet. So have you had a discussion with the applicant about him coming through and putting, since there were trees there, and I have a situation like this at my house where all the trees were removed and they planted in trees, which was very helpful. That, have you discussed a way that he could, would you be in agreement with him coming over on his property and putting in a certain height that we would determine here? And I know that we've done this in the past, and the trees that do really well are these big green arborvitaes. They grow really fast, they fill, they don't die as quickly as some of the, like the cryptomeria. And that would then buffer that whole structure on your side, as well as, I know that it's kind of a stark white on that side, is that correct? That
Yeah.
picture is correct, it depicts the correct?
Yeah, that's actually as of October 1st, so it's after they painted. What's interesting is that before it was more of a cement color, kind of a dull gray, which wasn't great. He did paint it, which was interesting because it makes it more apparent how tall it is in a weird way, because the fill dirt, it's more of a contrast. But to your point, I believe we're open to some sort of natural arrangement. You know, as we all know, when there's a beautiful set of trees, I love firs. They're just nice. They're evergreen. When you have a thick kind of layer of natural screening, that's much more preferable than a 16-foot fence. So it's debatable where the lot line is, where the property line is, because we had a survey done as well to do our fence. I would ask that we could maybe work together to figure out where that is. The trees could actually be a good buffer so that we don't have to think about it too much, because there's a tree we both own and hopefully like for the future that could be a screening tool. We're open to that. For us, it's just I just moved in last September. We love the property. Mr. George, I think, loves his property in the sense that we have these beautiful long lots. But the problem with that is that you kind of have to be very careful about that lot line, because you can see down, it's beautiful. We have a beautiful lawn. We use it as a dog park. It's amazing. It's wonderful. But on the sides, it's like when we're at our pool, when we see that, if we could see some trees or we could see some natural vegetation, there are actually a variety of options. Some are better than others. We've seen, I'm sure in Cobb County, a lot of dying trees, which is a bit concerning.
Right. So that's why when we've been doing some buffering of trees, buffering of walls and other variances, one of the things that have been very successful, and they're very beautiful. In fact, I just had a variance a while back where they had to put a significant amount of these big green arborvitaes, and it's beautiful. And it covered a whole fence, and it also buffered from a neighborhood that sits below this house.
Yeah, that sounds
So
workable.
those are very nice. The question I have is, I know you have a concern about the color of the fence on your side. What would you feel would be a pleasing color that would kind of disappear? White doesn't disappear. Do you have something of a preference of a natural color, or are you okay with that if we put some sort of
I mean, honestly,
addition?
white is better than it was. The cement color is not attractive, and we'd actually sort of talked about it at some point about having something that just matched either home. We're probably going to repaint soon in a lighter color, just more modern, and so anything that was kind of like approximate, maybe a happy medium between those two colors, I think would be acceptable. We're not looking for any specific color. It's basically, as y'all can see, there's a reasonable accommodation that we can make with regard to natural vegetation. We just need to make sure it's actually monitored and kind of like supported by the board, because people have different preferences, but we kind of defer to the board as far as like what's an appropriate and already successful means of mitigation with regard to vegetation.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions of him? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone, for your time.
I guess, since you're raising your hand, the applicant. So James, can you come back up, please? So I'll ask you a question. So it feels like, even though he's in opposition to you, that there is some sort of situation that we could do to compromise on his side, to make this wall and this height more attractive, more appeasing on that side, versus having you take down the wooden structure, the wooden part of the fence. So it would be, what I'm kind of leaning to is that you put in these big green arborvitaes and other such shrubs to layer that would get approval by our county arborist, so that the county arborist can also determine what will be what would be, have success in growing well on this side of the wall. So would you be open to making some modifications on that side?
Would prefer, happy to, get it, 100%, love to have trees. Like I said, we've already planted trees on our side. We weren't finished with everything by the time he took those pictures. Obviously, you heard that it was painted. It was painted that color because that's what he said to do. I asked him, would you like us to paint it the color of your home or ours? He said, we're going to make some modifications. I don't care. Paint it the color of your house. So I'm doing my best to work with him. So I'm
Well,
happy
it seems like
to do
you
it.
have a good relationship if you're talking, which
Yep.
sometimes the person in opposition, they don't talk at all.
Happy to.
Okay, so I'm ready. Thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
your time. So I'm ready to make my motion that we approve V99, and that the applicant will meet with the adjoining neighbor and establish a landscape plan that will include a variety of, like, the big green arborvitaes as well as low-level shrubs on Mr. Kennedy's side of the fence, which is still on the applicant's property, and that the landscape plan be submitted into the county arborist for approval once it's been established between the two parties, for approval to make sure that these trees and shrubbery will do maximum coverage and survive in the space provided. That's my motion.
Second.
Oh, I'm sorry. One more thing then, thank you. And that this will be done within the next 60 days. Okay.
Second that amended motion.
Place your votes. Motion passed 5-0. Thank you. Do you need to send your break? Okay. We need to take a short break, folks. We'll be back in just about 5 minutes or a little bit more, about 10 minutes. Thank you. in the regular agenda. Mr. Peterson?
And before we get going on the regular cases, we did hear back from the applicant for V91, Jake Anthony Strange, and he's actually out of town right now.
He's what?
He's out of town.
Out of town.
So the board probably has to make a decision to either continue this or hear it and deny it.
Would you,
So just make a motion.
yes, thank you.
Regarding V91, I really do not see a hardship in regards to his request, so my motion would be to deny it.
I second it.
Please vote. The motion to deny passed 5-0.
Thank you. Okay, next case is variance case V101. Vahid Mohammadi requests a variance to allow a fence to be more than 6 feet in height when in front of or to the side of the house in a residential district, and the height of the fence would be up to 8 feet in height in land lots 147, 214, and 215 of the 16th district. The property is located on the west side of Norman Drive, south of Shiloh Road. Is the applicant present?
Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me?
Okay, let the record show the applicant is present. Is there anyone here opposed to variance case V101? Two? Okay, let the record show there's 2 people here opposed. All those who wish to address the board, please come forward to be sworn in.
If you can,
Madam Chair, we're going to recommend a pause, that we didn't take the full 10 minutes
Okay.
on the announced break, so that'll give the applicant a few more minutes to
Oh, I'm
to be
sorry.
back into the room. That's fine.
I felt like we were running over.
Clerk, what time, are we good to go? Yes, Madam Chair, we're good. Proceed, and we're going to recommend that we make a motion on the previous matter and take a vote since we're now back.
We now are officially back in session. We had to give a complete 10 minutes to be sure that we were within our rules.
All right. I would like to make a motion regarding V91, and my motion is to deny based on the fact that I do not see a hardship.
I'll second it.
Please place your votes. The motion to deny is approved 5-0. Now, next case.
Next case is variance case V101, Vahid Mohammadi requests a variance to allow a fence to be more than 6 feet in height when in front of or to the side of the house in the residential district, and the fence is up to 8 feet in height in land lots 147, 214, and 215 of the 16th district. The property is located on the west side of Norman Drive, south of Charlotte Road. The applicant is here, and there is 2 people here opposed to the case. All those who wish to address the board, please come forward to be sworn in.
We probably need to redo it.
Hey, what?
And Madam Chair, just to remind everyone that I'll be keeping time. They have 2 minutes, and I will announce when they're at the 1 minute mark.
Good
Good afternoon, everybody.
Please state your name, and then you may begin. Thank you.
Sure, Vahid Mohammadi. The property is my parents' house, but there's a language barrier, so I'm going to be the representative, basically. So my parents, they fenced the house on the back side, the left of the house, and the 2 sides connecting to the both sides from the back of the building. So on the left side, there's a low grade on the corner of where the fence attaches to the side from the side of the house. And you see that driveway on the neighbor's house to the left? Yes, they do have a RV, which a lot of times is parked in that driveway, which is facing the house, which is the bathroom on the first floor and the basement windows. So for 2 reasons, there is some sections of the fence which is taller than 6 feet, which I prepared this, which gives you guys a better understanding of. On that side, and this is the other side, which I put the measurements on. Those are the posts for the fence. And as you can see, as you go from right to left, the fence gradually gets taller, up to 8 feet. And the fence on the backyard, they're all 8 feet. And we kept it taller for 2 reasons. First, for the look of it, so the both sides of the fence doesn't go down. We have a straight line. And the second reason was to block so the fence would be a few inches taller than the RV windows, so they won't have a view to the house. And I do have a picture. I communicated with Ms. Summer, send them some pictures. I don't know if anybody on the board seen the picture, but I do have a picture of the RV as well, if you'd like to see it. Sure. Oh. We also have the signatures from some of the neighbors across the street and some of the neighbors attached to us that they didn't have any objections to this.
You need to submit that to the clerk
Sure.
and pass it around.
We don't have the signatures. There's another case that has their signatures.
Please continue.
So we're requesting that those sections of the fence more than 6 feet, if we could keep them as it is. We believe when my dad built the fence, he did most of the work himself to save on the cost, and he wasn't aware of the code, the R20 code. So it was an honest mistake on his side. but they spent a lot of money building the fence, so we were requesting, if possible, we keep the fence as is, rather than lowering the sections of the fence that's taller than 6 feet. If you guys have any question, happy to answer.
Anything further you would
Yeah.
like to present during this portion? You have up to 10 minutes.
Basically, that's the only request. I have nothing else to request on that.
Okay. Thank you. You may be seated.
Thank you.
If we have questions after the hearing closes, we'll call you back.
Sure.
In opposition? Come up, please, and state your name and your position.
Hi, my name is Kim Moore, and I'm speaking on behalf of Sherry Smith, who lives in the house next to them, who brought this case urging you to decline. I live on the other side of her, so I'm aware of all of this, and I can assure you she has a valid case. This is a letter that I had emailed to you on her behalf. I'm writing in regard to variance case via 101. My name is Sherry Smith, and I live next door to the applicant at 4727 Norman Drive. Please deny this variance request. My neighbor, the applicant, states that they built the fence to be 8 feet in the front yard in order to avoid seeing our camper parked in the driveway. We only park it there when we're loading or unloading for a trip. Otherwise, we park it in our backyard in the covered metal storage specifically made for our RV. I don't have a picture. Oh, there's a picture of it. They don't even own the RV anymore, so it's not even a variable. Until now, we have always been able to pull out of our driveway with ease onto Norman Drive. There is a curve on the road right before our driveway, and their fence now blocks our view of oncoming cars, creating a road hazard. If their fence cannot be entirely moved back from the road, we are requesting Cobb County put up a blind driveway sign. When I look out my garage door, I see nothing but wood. When we back away from our garage and into our driveway, we nearly back into their fence. They built their fence directly onto the property line, which runs slanted. My fence has been up since 2016 and was 6 feet from the property line. Their new fence is on their property line and is approximately 15 inches from my existing fence. I can no longer stain my fence or replace any boards as they go bad. I have no choice but to take that section of my backyard fence down. The applicant graded their backyard, and now their yard sits several feet above my backyard. They graded, moved dirt in their backyard, and put approximately 2 feet of dirt up against my fence, raising the ground behind my fence, causing my fence boards to bow slightly. And there's pictures of that as well. They're using my fence as a barrier for the dirt as they moved in their backyard. Now 100% of the rainwater that drains into their rainwater drains directly into my backyard. This was never the case before they moved the dirt. We contacted Cobb Erosion Control, who knocked on their door, but no one responded, and they left a card. In the applicant's backyard, there is a fence with 8 feet high fence boards, but since they regraded, the fence appears to be 10 feet on her side of the fence. The applicant also blatantly ignores Cobb County ordinances by accepting a junk car in the backyard. There is no financial hardship as stated by the applicant, as my RV does not stay parked in my driveway. Their fence is a hardship for me since it was built on the property line only 15 inches from my fence, and due to their grading is now damaging my fence and causing stormwater issues in my yard. There would be no hardship for them to cut the fence down to the required 6 feet or get rid of it altogether, since it is causing me stormwater issues. My comments personally, Sherry and her husband recently sold the RV, and although it is no longer a current factor, it was never permanently parked in the driveway next to the applicant. When they graded the backyard, they filled in the swale along the fence that carried the rainwater away from Sherry's yard, and it's not level, so now all the water flows directly into her backyard, which is eroding her property, and her fence is bowing, and at least one of her expensive maples has died due to overwatering. The water that flows to her backyard flows through my driveway and my front yard and floods my front yard and walkway even more than it did before. The water also flows into our other neighbor's yard, and they have seeping in their basement. My own personal observation is the applicant is stating that replacing the fence will cause financial burden. However, had the applicant simply researched codes laws relevant to the situation, they may have avoided this case altogether. The fact that he didn't do his due diligence negates the argument that this will cause a financial burden for him. In short, that is the problem for the applicant to deal with. If financial burden is a consideration, Sherry will be faced with replacing the fence that cost her a total of $7,500 to put it in initially, because the way in which they have constructed the fence is damaging her fence. So it will have to be replaced, causing her financial burden. Had the applicant considered the fact that the fence has blocked a safe view of the street as she exits her driveway, we would not be here discussing this case. Had the applicant conferred with Sherry Smith, he would have learned about the reason for the swale, which is to manage the excessive rainwater, but he did not. I place responsibility for this case squarely on the applicant for not researching codes, laws, permits. These things are in place for a reason. Code enforcement exists for a reason. Enforce code. So I ask you to enforce code and deny the applicant the variance for which he is asking.
Hey there, how y'all doing?
Hi.
My name's Craig Cochran. I am a 23-year resident of Dunn Moving Subdivision. I live 5 doors down from the petitioner on this. My issue is primarily aesthetic and safety. So what you may not have been able to see from the photos there, but there's a bend in Norman Drive that exists right at that driveway where you saw the red code sign. That is a bend in the road. So that fence, which exceeds code, is right at the road in a bend. So it's an automatic safety hazard, and there have been multiple near misses with people going around that turn and yet not being able to see what's around that turn. So, and it is literally almost to the edge of the road, this fence. It's also a foreboding fortress-like appearance. It looks like Anderson State Prison from the 1860s. All the way around, it is just plain, and from the front corners of the house, it also is just plain wood like that. And just, it changes the whole complexion, the whole feel and tone of the neighborhood. So it's out of code. It was also done very fast. Mr. Mahadi built that thing himself, which was amazing, but he built it probably in 2 weeks by himself. So there was a big rush. And all my neighbors were shocked. This guy is going like crazy, day and night building this fence as a matter of possibly spite against my neighbor. I don't know, but it was unbelievable how fast he did it. So perhaps having slowed down and researched the code might have been smart. But at any rate, it's unattractive. It exceeds code. It is a significant safety hazard, and it changes the look and feel of the entire area. So I respectfully request that you deny this variance for those reasons. I appreciate it.
Anything else from either one of you? If not, you can be seated, and if we have questions, we'll call you back up.
Would the applicant please come forward? You have impeded the visibility with the fence at the roadway, like there's no question. And there are DOT standards which you must meet, and the fence does not meet that. You can't block the visibility of a road. So I wanted you to know that up front. We are going to have DOT come up to elaborate further, but I wanted you to know that.
Okay.
There are also soil erosion concerns that have been brought up, and we're going to have Andrew come forward and discuss that as well. The grading that you did was has had a big impact, and we're going to have to address what's going on. And the height is it's just too high. And as we communicated, I asked you the purpose of the fence being so high, and you said it was to block visibility from the applicant's house to the neighbor. that's kind of really a tall order for a fence to do. So, and I suggested trees would be more viable option. So I just wanted you to know that, be thinking about that as these folks come up to further discuss what I just mentioned, okay?
Sure. May I explain something before?
All right.
So I believe a lot of these comments is because of a feud, which I didn't want to bring up to begin with, because Kevin and Sherry, the left side neighbors, they did put a fence up at the same location, which when we did our survey, could you show this? It's on the highlighted area on the survey, which they came 3 feet towards the end of the fence into our property. The line you see on the top was the fence they put up. And we went and talked to them. They didn't do a survey, so they came to our land. We talked to them, and they were very defensive about moving the fence to their own property. We were doing the fence. We offered them so they don't have to spend more money. We took their fence down for them and gave them all their boards and stuff back so they can use on the other projects. They do not own the RV right now, but they're constantly buying and selling RVs. So there's always usually an RV parked there, and it's a lot of times at use. As you could see on that picture, the sides are extended, ladders down. And my parents are immigrant because of the religion. They don't feel comfortable anybody having a view into the house, especially the bathroom or the basement, which is my sister's go work out and doesn't have air conditioning, so they need to put a window up. And Mr. Kevin and Sherry, they hang out at their garage a lot, which has direct view to those sites. I was not aware of the DOT that does impede the road. I believe the erosion, the pictures you saw, it was from the top soil that when we graded it, it rained right after, so that was the top soil. There's some loose dirt, which washes away. And right now, because they talked to us, we monitored that they're downgrade from our property. So anyway, even before, rainwater they used to drain into their yard and so forth and so forth. Because all the houses after, I think 3 or 4 houses, they're more downgrade from my parents' property. And the backyard, everything is 8 feet, which I believe on the R20 code, on the back side of the fence, you are allowed to have 8 foot tall. As I said, my parents, especially my dad, wasn't aware of the R20 codes. And at the time that after grading, I left the country, I'm usually the one that researched these stuff for him. And I was not in town when he put the fence up. So if need be, we have no problem complying with whatever the board recommends. But I just want to explain that it's been an ongoing feud between between the neighbors, which is unfortunate because my parents, they're neighborly. I mean, other neighbors on the house they have a relationship with. And after, even Kevin and Sherry, when my dad had back problem, he used to come help my dad cut the grass. And right after, they had to take the fence down, which it was impeded in our property. After that, the relationship went sour. And I believe a lot of these complaints might be because of that, because it was very harsh words exchanged.
Okay. Let's have our staff come up with
Sure,
their
sure.
comments. Thank you. DOT, please.
Good afternoon, Ligia Florin, DOT.
Hi.
Yes.
Please address the driveway issues and visibility.
Sure. So our comment was that the driveways are considered low-volume intersections, and therefore they have to comply with the intersection coordinate site distance requirements. Our code states that no fence, structure, planting, or other obstruction above the height of 3 feet shall be maintained within 15 feet of the intersection of the right-of-way lines. And so we have to make sure that this fence complies with that. And we measure the line of sight from any driveway or from any road, 15 feet from the edge of pavement back and 3 feet height, because we're thinking about a car coming out of that driveway. So we have to have a certain distance depending on the on what the road is classified as, and this is a local road, so it will be 280 feet in either direction. They should be clear to the driver.
Okay. And this, determining this and figuring out where the fence needs to be lowered, that's something that the applicant would need to hire somebody to do and measure and get all the lines of sight, all that stuff?
That's correct. They will submit it to us, and we will approve it, and we will say, yes, we agree that you have met the line of sight.
Okay. Do you have any other comments regarding the driveway or the fence?
No, that is it. And we can provide the details or the standards if they need to, and they're also published in our website.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Okay, thank you. All right, next, if we could hear from Andrew with soil erosion, stormwater. Interesting. That's interesting.
Hi, Andrew Heath with Stormwater Management.
Okay, if you, I sent you a comment this morning about the erosion problem. If you could please talk about that and discuss your thoughts on it.
Yes, absolutely. So the fencing apparently, and as the applicant was saying, has some soil apparently against one side of the fence that may be redirecting some runoff where it didn't go before. And so that's something that we could have the applicant try to grade that in such a way that they maintain the previous drainage pattern. And so that's something that we could take into account if you wanted to consider that in the fencing, but that's a good catch. If the soil is against the fence, I would think that the soil itself would need to be removed, because at least a little distance from the fence at least, so that the water flow could be established. And also, if the fence itself ever had to be maintained or removed, or if it failed or something prematurely because of that, you would have free soil that would be falling, and then that would create further erosion issues. So I think that area would need to be kind of stabilized to prevent further erosion.
Okay, in order to accomplish what you just stated, is what would need to happen? Would that be, would you need to come out and do some analysis, or do they need to hire somebody to come out and do some analysis on what the swale that has disappeared and caused the issues?
Yes, and I would like to meet with the Smith property owners as well and just talk to them. But yeah, a site visit would be really good to help visualize that, see what the existing patterns were, and then see how best to reconstitute that so that the fence isn't creating any additional issue.
Okay. I think that covers all my questions. Does anybody have any other questions? Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, and if code enforcement, Yolisa could please come forward.
Good afternoon. My name is Yolisa Faustin from Cobb County Code Enforcement.
Hi. Can you just kind of give us a synopsis of what all has been happening out there and where we're at?
Generally, well, On July 7th, we received a complaint stating that the front yard fence is higher than 6 feet and the backyard fence is higher than 8 feet. And then it also stated that the fence in the backyard raised to allow water and mud run off into their yard, which is the neighbor.
Okay. Have you been able to get in touch with the owner and explain the situation?
Yes, we had an officer go out, and the officer issued a notice of violation on July 14th for general development standards, walls and fences, parking standards, and customary home occupation. The write-up was done because there was a bus on the property in the backyard that was parked on the grass. The officer did go back out to inspect the property yesterday. Well, October 9th, and the bus was removed from the backyard, but the only violation that remains is that the fence is over 6 feet.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for code enforcement? Okay. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions for the applicant or the neighbor? No? Okay. Will the applicant please come back up? So as you just heard, there are a number of issues that are going to need to be addressed.
Correct.
So at this time, because there are follow-up issues, I'm going to make a motion to hold this so that staff can have time to come and y'all can meet and decide, you know, what's a problem, how do we fix it. You're going to need to hire somebody to do the line of sight issues regarding out at the driveway, out at the public road, and that will be your responsibility to correct it.
Will they tell me what is the requirement for the line of sight so I can?
Yes, she can give you that information.
Perfect.
Okay, so I'm not sure how long coordinating all this will be, so my motion would be to hold this until December so that everybody has enough time to meet and come up with a plan to remediate the issues. Does anybody have any further comments, questions? All right, that is my motion.
Second.
Everybody place your vote, please. The motion to hold has passed 5-0. Thank you. You may take your seat. You may be seated, sir.
Thank you.
And just to be clear, that date is December 13th, 2023.
My son's birthday.
Okay, next case is variance case V102, Man Fung Omakodian. Request a variance to, number one, allow a second electrical meter on a residential lot. Number two, allow an accessory structure, which is an existing 253 square foot shed, number one, to be located to the side of the principal building. And three, reduce the setbacks for an accessory structure over 650 square feet for an existing 1,326 square foot shed, number two, required 100 feet to 20 feet adjacent to the west property line in land lot 1178 of the 16th district. The property is located on the north side of Blue Sky Drive, west of Old Canton Road. Is the applicant present? Let the record show the applicant is here. Is there anyone here opposed to the variance case of V102? Let the record show there's no one opposed. Would the applicant please come forward and be sworn in?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. State your name, please, for the record.
So I'm Manfong Omokodi, and I go by Iris.
I'm the homeowner
Yeah.
of this property, and this is my husband.
I'm Omar Makodian.
Hi. Could you please talk about what it is that you're asking for in this variance, your request?
Should I? Yes. Sorry, we're new to this process, so.
It's okay.
We bought this house. We actually live in Smyrna now. We bought this property trying to move in, but we wanted to have renovation and everything done beforehand. When we bought this property, there is already an existing structure on the back. It's like a pole barn, which looks like a dome-shaped top. And as we're going through the renovation, so we did the building permit and out of the process, going through the renovation of the main property, we realized that, the building in the back was also in not a very good shape, so the siding has holes in it. The water was coming down when it rains hard, and the stairs, going up the stairs, was actually pretty shaky. So we're like, as we're going through this, let's just go ahead and do this whole part as well, without changing the square footage or the footprint of the property, of that building. So as we're going through this process, we actually didn't know very much, but one of the inspector had come out and advised us we actually need a variance on this, so which is why we're here. So we wanted, basically, we were trying to make this more usable so that, my husband is actually an ER physician. As he comes home, he just wanted peace and quiet from our 3 kids under 5 years old. So he wanted his own space outside of our main house, which is what we wanted like a sanctuary for him on the back there, basically. It will be a 2-level. Main level is like a TV room with a pool table on it, and then upstairs would be like a theater room. And we actually wanted to change the outlook of it so that instead of it is higher in the middle, it's higher on one side, it slants to the other side in the back. Sorry. So it kind of matches the house, our house itself, instead of like an older look structure.
So thank you for that information with regards to this. So when I looked into to this building, you have done some, not minor modifications, you've done some major modifications to this. And did you get this permitted to begin this type of construction? Because when I went to the county, there are no permits on this, and this is pretty much completed.
Yeah, no, actually, the only thing we did inside were literally we took the second level and change the roof line on that side. So we haven't finished anything inside. We paused immediately when we found out it needed a separate building permit. And I guess I misunderstood the process because we did a homeowner permit on the whole project. So I misunderstood the process where this actually requires separate permit instead because we really just didn't know. So we stopped everything immediately.
So the builder that is, because your house is wrapped in the same material, so the builder that's doing your house, he did this as well?
Yeah, well, they were working on, the same workers are working on these projects, yes.
And so your house is under construction as well, being remodeled. Do you have permits on your house?
Mm-hmm. We have 2 permits, actually, because we're also renovating the basement. Mm-hmm. So we have permits for the level above, the main level and above, and then the separate for the bottom. We actually just passed,
I just want to interject. With the barn that we haven't changed anything in the size or shape. The roof line was a dome. All we did was made it flat but slanting because when it rains, it drains on both sides. And now we just put it to drain backwards. So the front is higher than the back, and the height level is still exactly the same.
Okay, correct. The other thing that you had discussed, that you are planning on putting a shower and a restroom in to plumb it. And have you done that? Have you gone forward to do that?
No, we haven't, just because we had to go through this process, the variance process, before we can get any permits or anything on continuing the process.
And then the second electric meter, what is that for?
It actually, initially, we weren't requesting for it. It was just a recommendation. I'm not even sure. What did we ask for? Second meter?
No, once one of the gentlemen came to do an inspection, they recommended that because of what I want to use it for, that we need a separate meter there.
So what you want to use it for, can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Summary or?
What you would
It's a
like to
man
use?
cave. Man cave, pool table, bar, theater room. I have the architectural drawings.
Or the floor plan that we're
They can
planning.
put it on the screen.
So this is the first level.
So it's, the doors, everything have been the same. There's like the barn door and the old
by
one,
the
which is
billiard
on the
room,
right.
Yeah.
The entrance is still where the door is. It was a workshop before. I don't really know how to do much of that. I just have a pool table there, there's a bar there, there's a wine cellar there, the steps going up are the same, and the upstairs is just an open space, which is for a theater room. Now, I just wanted a toilet down there, because if I'm back from work, I'm a travel ER physician, also own an urgent care here in town, on Roswell Road here. If I need my own space, I just want to be able to go and just hang out there. We eventually planned on possibly getting a pool at the back at some point. And so I was like, yeah, let's just, if anyone's in there and wants to shower, jump in the pool, we can.
Without going through the
Without
house.
going through the house. They can just use my spot here.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions? So you can take a seat right now, and I would like to call Andrew Heath. He's our stormwater engineer.
Hi, Andrew Heath, Stormwater Management.
Hi, Andrew. We had a discussion the other day with regards to this property, and there were some issues that you had stated when you had inspected this and made your comments. What I would like to know is this pole barn is now turned into a significant accessory structure, and I would like to know what the difference between a floodplain and a floodway is.
Right. So floodplain, in just a very general sense, is just land that's just inundated by excess rainfall runoff. And that's just a very general term. The floodway, though, is, if you can imagine in your mind a stream or a river, that main area of flow of not just where the stream is normally, but a little bit of the bank on either side, that's where during a flooding event, that's where the vast majority of the volume, the highest velocity of flow is going to occur. And so there are some areas of floodplain, typically they vary, that are outside the floodway, and those areas are sometimes referred to as ineffective flow areas. They are just usually shallow areas of flood water. The water's maybe not really moving very much. It's more or less stored there. But that area, that central area of floodway, is where you have the greatest volume of flow and the greatest velocity of flow. And so on our mapping,
So when you look at this map, can you do a little pointer? So you point where this accessory structure, well, there's two accessory structures, this pole barn conversion, and there's another little garage in the front of it. Can you point to where those are, and if they're in the floodway, the floodplain, what your concern is with this?
yes, and so that, where all of that shaded area, both the green and the blue on the screen, is all floodplain, but that blue region is the floodway. So kind of right about there where the sheds are, where about approximately where that mouse pointer is, that's where that ineffective flood area we were talking about and the floodway come together. So most of, well, all of the larger shed that's to the rear and almost all of the smaller shed to the front are both within the floodway.
And so when you have these accessory structures, is there a code that you can't have accessory structures in the floodway? Can you elaborate a little bit about that, please?
Yes, Chapter 58 of the Cobb County's Flood Damage Prevention Ordinance, essentially with respect to the floodway, no development is allowed within the floodway at all unless it is functionally required to be there. So for instance, like a bridge, if you were building a bridge across the river, the bridge just has to be there, and then we have to analyze that and accommodate that. But other than something like that, or a dock, something like that that's functionally dependent and has to be there, but other than that, we don't allow development within the floodway.
So on this piece of property, there is this floodway where these two accessory structures are in place. And then as we go further into the yard, is there a continuation of this floodway? Can you kind of elaborate a little bit? Because I kind of heard them make a remark about a pool. Like, what exactly can they do in this backyard? Because I don't think they understand the significance of these two, the floodway, especially the floodway.
Yeah, and I'd like to say too that our office is always open, so any applicant, this applicant or anyone, if they have questions, they can always come sit down and we can have a chat about it, about what their plans are. But as you can see on the screen, that where that blue edge is the beginning of the floodway. And then as you go downhill behind the house, you're going down and you can see the little line sort of through the trees. That's where the main stem of the creek is. And then on the opposite side of the creek, the floodway continues there off to the north. So this is the main stem of the creek there, and that's a very significant floodplain at this location. So all of that blue shaded area behind the home, and you can tell when the home was built, it was permitted and they knew about the floodplain, and it's built up out of the floodplain. And it's not very far from the floodplain, but vertically it's out of the floodplain. So in that region of floodplain and floodway that's there immediately behind the home, or actually all of that rear area of the lot, not only do you have floodway, which again, a pool would be a structure that would be not allowed within the floodway, but also Soap Creek has stream buffers associated with it as well. So at some point, as you go behind the house, you're going to begin to, conflict with those stream buffers as well. So that area that's behind the house, there's a very small area, maybe behind the deck to where the floodway begins. So there might be room for something, probably not a pool, maybe a small patio, something like that. But it would be hard for me to see how you could build a pool.
So basically, given what they have built here, so basically the house is in the floodplain, but it's sitting up high. But there's really no other type of structure that can go into this property because of this floodway and the restrictions of floodways.
That's right. And just to clarify, the home itself is not within the floodplain. It appears to be up. But you're right. Once you go back behind the home just a relatively few feet, that's all floodway. They're all the way to the stream, and that's going to be very difficult or impossible to build in.
And again, Andrew, I'm sorry, I didn't write it down. In the floodway, what is the code that you referenced? What you cannot have?
Yes, and specifically it's Chapter 58 of the code, Chapter 58-66, Subpart E, Part 3, Part F is the actual code reference.
Part E, Part F?
That's right, E3F.
Okay. Okay, does anyone have any questions?
Thank you very much. Can you tell me what the base elevation is of the existing barn, or the slab level, or whatever it sits on?
That's unknown. As I understand, it was originally a pole barn, which the floodplain in this region of the county was updated in 2012. And so at one time, areas, especially if the floodplain were different at the time, sometimes pole barns are sort of considered something like an agrarian structure that just has poles and a roof, and it doesn't really have a floor per se, it's just dirt under the building. And so maybe at some point in time, someone created a floor by, putting some boards or something across horizontally, but what the elevation of that is, I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions? Okay. Given this information, pardon? Oh, have you sit down? I'm sorry. So taking into consideration all of the issues that are on this property, we really can't go forward as a variance board to go against the code of our stormwater. So at this point, I would have to make a motion that we deny V102, number 1, the meter, the 2, they will have to remove the accessory structure, and number 3, they're going to have to remove the other accessory structure that's over 650 feet. Basically remove everything in the backyard because of this code. So that is my motion.
Second.
Place your votes. So the motion is, the variance is denied. Vote is 5-0 to deny.
Can I, do I need to make an addendum to this at a certain period of time when they need to remove these structures? Mr. Johnson, what do you feel would be a fair and reasonable amount of time to give this timeline to this?
I would leave that to the discretion of the board, but I would believe that 60 days, 2 months should be adequate.
60
But
days.
again, that's to the discretion of this board.
Okay. So I would like to make an addendum to the motion that that the applicant must remove all structures in the backyard and to do it within 60 days.
Madam Chair, if I can just ask the clerk to note that we're amending a motion previously adopted, so we're not adding an addendum, we're amending a motion, and we're going to retake a first and a second and vote again.
Second.
Yeah. Do we need to restate? If you got it. Okay. All right. Place your votes, please.
Sorry.
Motion is passed with amendments. 5-0. All right, Mr. Peterson, it's your turn.
Next case is variance case V110, Pulte Home Company, LLC. Request a variance to number 1, reduce the setback from required 15 feet to 10 feet adjacent to the south property line. And number 2, reduce the setback from required 40 feet to 27 feet adjacent to the north property line and land lot 237 of the 20th District. Property is located on the south side of Paul Simon Road, on the west side of Turnwell Place, and on the north side of Whithorn Way. The applicant is present. Is there anyone here opposed to variance case V110? Let the record show there's 10 people here opposed to variance case V110. All those who would like to address the board, please come forward to be sworn in.
Would you like to proceed?
Yes, thank you very much, and good afternoon, Board. I'm Kevin Moore. I'm here on behalf of Pulte Homes in this application for a variance for a lot that they have in the subdivision that they have developed and built homes in called Summer Hour Subdivision. It's off of Paul Samuel Road in West Cobb. I'm going to, no relation to the board member, just to be clear. It's just the name, it's the name that they chose. Such a great name, so they chose that. But I'm going to turn now to the plan itself and try to explain the context of these variances that we have requested, as well as explain the justification that I hope that you will see as well. This is Lot 6 in the subdivision. It's one of the entrance lots. This is Paul Samuel Road. This is a main entrance to this subdivision off Paul Samuel Road. And then this is another road within the subdivision itself as well. So this is not just a corner lot, it's a lot that has 3 road frontages, Paul Samuel Road, and then the 2 subdivision streets. So that's a little unusual, that situation when you have a lot that has 3 road frontages. This lot also has a 30-foot Cobb County Marietta Water Authority easement. That's not just like a Cobb County water line. That will be a main water trunk that is a Cobb County Marietta Water Authority easement off of Paul Samuel Road. In addition, there's a landscape easement, a landscape frontage easement for Paul Samuel Road that also burdens this property. But the main thing that happens when you have a lot such as this is from a setback and how those are set. So that you can see what the setbacks are. And this is the building envelope. It's a 15-foot setback here, 15 feet on this side, 40 feet to this, what's considered to be the rear here, and 5 feet here. And so this is the housing or building envelope. And so that building envelope, because it's on a corner lot where the setbacks are basically how you establish those are different from other lots in the subdivision, you end up with a very atypical building envelope. In other words, this building envelope is wide and not deep. The rest of the homes in the subdivision, for the most part, their building envelopes, meaning where you can build within the setbacks, are deeper and not as wide across. In a subdivision like this, which is a beautiful subdivision that Pulte has developed and built in, part of what they do is have their house plans that they set up for this very nice subdivision. There are 5 or 6 different models of house plans. They have to meet certain zoning conditions as it relates to the house that they build, certain size. Here, the minimum square footage is 3,250 square feet for a minimum square footage. So this is a very nice subdivision, as well as certain architectural features they have to meet. So they have a set of house plans that they have built throughout this subdivision. It doesn't mean every house looks the same, because they have 5 or 6 house models, plans, and each of those have 4 or 5 different variations for the exterior that can occur with those house plans. But what it does do is for the entire subdivision, there's a certain consistency of feel, consistency of look, consistency of architecture throughout the subdivision that give it somewhat of a branding, somewhat of a name. If you buy a house in that subdivision, yours doesn't look just like your neighbor's, but there's a sense that you're in a place where the homes are consistent in terms of their quality, in terms of their architectural appeal and style and so forth. And so that also, by the way, plays into price point, sales price, plays into, more importantly, the marketability in the future. It helps maintain a very healthy price point going into the future. This has a strong homeowners association. So all of those things play into why they do what they do when building these homes and selecting the models. So the model that we're showing here is one of those. It's called the Wingate. It's been built in Summer Hour, and then they looked through, and Pulte looked through its models to find one. It doesn't have a model for this subdivision that is in the shape that fits that envelope, plain and simple. That envelope being wider than it is deep would be very atypical for a home in a subdivision such as this, where your homes are all 2-story homes, 3-car garages, those types of things. Those homes are deeper than they are wide, in other words. So what they have done, though, is got the one that would mirror this box the best, and they've placed it on the lot. But what that does is it results in 2 setback variances. One, to reduce this from 40 feet to 12 and a half feet or 12.7 to 227 feet, I'm sorry. And then the front setback for just this one front stoop to be reduced from 15 to 5 feet in order to fit the house on the lot as it properly should be. Not shoving it over to one side or the other, but so it looks properly placed on the lot. And again, this subdivision has been mostly built out and done a good job. The only other option that Pulte would have would be to go to one of their other plan sets, and they build houses nationwide. So I'm not here to say we don't have a house that fits that envelope, but Pulte does not have a house in the selection of models to the level that has been built in this subdivision that fits this box. We can certainly do it and have it meet the architectural standards that are in the zoning, and it'll meet the minimum square footage. But what it won't be is a house that looks at their entrance like the other houses, other than maybe color selection and materials. And that's really why we are asking for this variance. Simply put, because of 3 road frontages and the encumbrances that are here and the house models that have been built throughout this subdivision, they simply don't fit the atypical building envelope that's produced by the fact that this has 3 road frontages. And that's why we're here to ask for these variances. Again, it's more a matter of Pulte wanting to be sure that it can build the house that's been built throughout the subdivision and do so in a manner on the lot where it looks appropriate from an aesthetic standpoint, from a spacing standpoint, when you're driving in the subdivision, especially if you're coming in the entrance, so that it looks correct and appropriate for the quality, the price points, and for the subdivision as a whole. That's the reason we are asking for the 2 variances as it relates to those 2 setbacks. We believe they're fully justified. We do not believe it can cause any negative impact, harm to any neighbor. You're talking about a front and a rear to the roads, not to the sides. So it doesn't cause any harm whatsoever or impact or negative impact to any other homeowner in the neighborhood. It simply allows them to build a house that's appropriate for the neighborhood, which they've already have been doing. Certainly, you never want to have, and Pulte certainly does not want to have a situation where its very own homeowners are here opposed to it trying to do this. So it understands that. We've had discussions, and they've reached out and had discussions, and they don't want to try to do this. They would like to try to have some happy resolution to it, and it certainly will explore every avenue and opportunity to do so. But where we are today is requesting the variances so they can simply build a house like they've built throughout this subdivision. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, and certainly respectfully request your approval of the variance requests. Thank you.
The people speaking in opposition, would you please come forward? And as you're coming forward, when you are prepared to speak, if you can tell us your name, introduce yourself as well, making note whether or not you live in the neighborhood. Do you have like one central spokesperson or?
Excuse me, ma'am?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you.
Madam Chair, just a reminder again, I'll be taking time at 10 minutes, and I will give you a 1-minute warning.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Board. My name is Kyle Blond. I'm here on behalf of the majority of the residents of the Summer Hour neighborhood to present to the Board our comments regarding this variance. I live adjacent to the lot under consideration. Lot 7 is my lot. This is lot 6 we're discussing. Been there for about 4.5 years since we first moved in, my wife and our 3 children. And then also grew up in Marietta, currently part of Georgia Tech's research faculty, and I serve aboard a Marine Reserve unit on Dobbins. So my roots run deep here in this community, and I'm here to advocate for the best interest of it. So thank you for your time and consideration today. A quick overview of what we'll be discussing is a background that's already been discussed to an extent. Our specific comments regarding the community's desires on this property, impacts on the property value that building a house that Pulte is proposing will have on adjacent and nearby homes. And then also just our comments on the county standards we request that the board enforces. After that, we'll have a specific request from our board to the board, and then a video from a resident who lives across the street from the property under consideration who wasn't able to attend today. So quick background, the lot under consideration, lot 6, is the first one in the neighborhood at the entrance in phase 1 of 167 home neighborhood that's been developed in 3 phases. And it's also across the street from a similar hot lot that's empty, that has been empty for several years on the opposite side. So right at the entrance to the neighborhood, you'll see these 2 lots. I've got videos and pictures we'll walk through here in a second for. So again, 2016, Summer Hauer began construction, and since then that lot has remained empty. 2019, phase 1 was completed. May of this year, the final homes were sold right at the front of the neighborhood. And 5 months later, here we are today at this variance hearing. So residents, including myself, continually requested to discuss these plans with Pulte on these empty lots. They've been an eyesore for many years at the front of our neighborhood, receiving either delayed, incomplete, or inconsistent responses if we got any response at all. So this has been a major discussion item with the HOA Transition Committee due to the residents' interest in the lot's development and the concern of building a standard home from the neighborhood on that undersized lot that clearly can't fit it. Like was just discussed, it's atypical for the options available to the neighborhood. So we talked about the proposed plat, and I've got this video showing you what that looks like as you enter the neighborhood. Let's see, are you able to play the video?
I just downloaded what you said.
Okay. All right, if you click on the bottom, it may play. Okay, I'll walk you through this. I took this walking into the neighborhood. You can see our front of the neighborhood sign there, coming off Paul Samuel Road. You can see the variant signs. That's a lot with the front of the house being proposed to face the entrance road right there. What you are unable to see here, but it was at the end of the video, every other house is faced in another direction towards those other residential roads. And so in order for Pulte to squeeze this house in here, they would have to orient it in an out-of-place manner facing this entrance road. Additionally, the approximate location for the corner of the proposed structure is 2 to 3 feet away from our front of the neighborhood sign here. So you can see that arrow with that bush is approximately where the front of the neighborhood or the corner of the house would be. Again, this is an undersized lot. The building envelope is not there for the homes in this neighborhood to include the one proposed by Pulte. That's a picture of me with the approximate distance from the adjacent, from my property line to the back of the structure. So I'm 6 foot tall. The doors for these homes are 8 feet tall. So you can imagine, again, kind of the encroachment and the privacy concerns that we have for the back of the house coming up to our lot. We've got additional slides and videos or pictures in the backup slides as well for this property. Lastly, over the years, this is typically what we've had to deal with in terms of not getting a response from Pulte, right? We've got overgrown vegetation that's crawling into our lot. We continually ask them, we've made offers to them before about maintaining these lots to improve the value of and aesthetic of our neighborhood. For our first comment, talking about community desires, part of the HOA transition survey, we see 69% of the 135 respondents in the neighborhood did not want a house built on either one of those entrance lots. Ideally, we have it to be a green space. And the main concern there is the size of the house on the lots. Again, concerns of decreasing home values, poor community aesthetic, and a lack of privacy at the front of the neighborhood. So residents, including myself, made offers to Pulte in an attempt to discuss and kind of drive the conversation to make a decision on these lots over the years in order to preserve the community aesthetic that went either ignored or unanswered by Pulte. Last 2 comments here, the property value impacts based off of a market analysis survey that we did of comparable square footage houses in the neighborhood. We estimate a decrease of about 10% in home value for adjacent and nearby homes to the lot due to safety, aesthetic, and privacy impacts. That survey and that analysis is provided in the backup slides. And lastly, for comment C, these setbacks under consideration are required for the neighborhood zoning due to safety and appearance. So those are enforced throughout the rest of the community to set precedent. We ask those be enforced for this application, this variance as well. So our request to the board, specifically per those aforementioned comments, our summer hour residents disagree with the below variance application statement that the waiver of requested setbacks would have no impact on adjacent or nearby properties. So in order to preserve the community's value and county standards, we request that you deny this application for variance, V110. And this video is also not going to play for our neighbor, but she also expressed her concern being across the street, having made offers to Pulte. She's a real estate agent, so she's familiar with this business space. And again, she's been looking at an empty lot with its issues and overgrown vegetation for many years. Joni Bates. So with that, I want to say thank you for your time and consideration and offer it to my other residents here to speak.
Okay, I'll jump in. So my name's Justin Long. I'm the HOA president that's going through the transition right now. I just wanted to bring up some of the issues we had with the orientation of the lot, where currently the front portion of the lot would be on the existing electrical utilities that we have for the signage, as well as some of the issues we would have with some of our rules and regulations within the community, where we have a setback from 18 feet from the curb for fencing. And with the orientation of this house, it's going to make the future fencing of this house extremely difficult, and I don't think there's a way that it could be done without having some sort of jarring appeal, curb appeal, because this house is oriented completely different than every other house on the street, with its front door will be facing the entrance, basically. And then in addition to that, we've already had some issues with consistency in the neighborhood. Pulte's changed throughout the different phases. The orientation of garages, where we went from side facing to front facing, and that's something looks like they're trying to do again, and this would have the space where the third car garage that comes out would actually come into that fence setback. It would only be roughly 10 feet from the curb. So there could be additional issues that we could run into there, and that also conflicts with a lot of our other fencing rules where that could come up. Sorry, they're trying to get pictures. And I think from the HOA side, we have talked about, as was mentioned, we've been looking at ways to purchase these lots for to use mostly for green space is what the community's desire is. So we've been trying to work through some of those issues. So I think those are the main reasons I had to oppose this.
Just for reference, so the video had pictures that, if you don't mind just scrolling through here, of the orientation of the lot coming through the front of the neighborhood. So just to give you an idea of perspective and measurements.
Apologies, I just remembered there's one piece where the HOA also has landscaping.
1 minute.
That goes around the lot. You can see where we're currently maintaining landscape, and the house also protrudes into that space as well.
My name's Tricia McHugh. I live about 5 houses from this location. My concern, number one, first and foremost, is aesthetically what this property would do to the current aesthetic look of the community. And then also, just a question for Pulte that has gone unanswered is the alternative. Does Pulte have an alternative? What if this variance doesn't get approved, and the impacts that might have to the community as well?
Can you just go back to the front? Sure. I just want one last thing to note. My name's Lila Kennedy. I've lived in the neighborhood for 2 years, and I purchased a home in the last phase, so I live further back in the neighborhood. But this is the entrance and exit that we use to go to school every day. It is a high-volume entrance. It's the intersection.
Madam
if
Chair,
you can
time
see
has
that-
expired.
It's fine. Thank you.
Okay, y'all can be seated if we have any more questions.
Thank you.
We've closed the hearing for this.
Madam Chair, you can offer the opponents more time, but then we'd have to provide equal
Yes.
additional time to the applicant, but that's to the discretion of this board.
Madam Chair, if I could ask that we provide them 2 more minutes for the opposition and then allow that same amount of additional time for the applicant. I
I'm
would
fine with
appreciate
that.
it.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Johnson, for reminding me.
Thank you so much. I just want to point out to the picture on the far right where the proposed lot is going to be. That is right there facing Turnwell. That's about 80 feet approximately. We've got, traffic that converges right there 80 feet every morning waiting to get onto Paul Samuel Road. It's not an easy intersection to turn left onto Paul Samuel Road because of all of the oncoming traffic. It's just a tight intersection, and also right across the street where you see that White House is a bus stop there. It's the first bus stop for the neighborhood, so lots of kids. When these plans were developed, is a new neighborhood. Now we are fully populated with lots of children right there. To add another structure in such a tight intersection, this is our main exit and entrance. It's just too much going on to have another home that's going to be squeezed into that lot.
Anything else?
Yeah, just one more thing. Originally, when the community was built in 2016, the original plans did not have these measurements. So this was not part of the original planning. So seems the objective is profit, but it would be wonderful to have the community support in what this becomes.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey.
So, Madam Chair, the applicant would have an additional
I'm watching, he's coming up.
minute
right
and a
now.
half.
Yeah.
So you used a minute, unless,
You get minute and a half, you should be able to handle that, right?
Thank you for the additional time, and I'll keep it very brief. What I stated in my presentation addresses very succinctly exactly the problems that I heard, except for one, and that is that the HOA specifically wants this to be green space, or the idea that we're squeezing in a house and creating a place to creating a lot to put a house on. Simply not true. If the HOA wants to make an offer, they can make a written offer that has to be legitimate for the lot, and they can certainly do that. That has not occurred. We're not creating a lot. We're not squeezing a house in a lot. This is a platted lot in the subdivision that Pulte has every right to build on. The only question is whether you want the house to look and have the feel of the rest of the houses on the street, or you want it to look not. That's the only question. Thank you.
Objection, please.
Would you like to have them come?
Yes, Madam Chair. Kevin, if you could come back, let's start with you. Just have a few questions of each side, and I appreciate your sticking around. And
Sure. Thank you.
I know at the beginning of the hearing, you asked this be continued, and you wanted an opportunity to work on, looking at all kinds of other designs you have around the country to see what else might fit on the lot. But your understanding that you're conveying to us is you have the right to put something there, and you have the ability to put some kind of house there. It just may not conform to what's in the neighborhood otherwise, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
They don't want to do, Pulte does not want to do that. We would prefer, whether it's addressed a concern one way or the other, with orientation of it, or figure that out and try to address that. That's what they would far, far prefer.
Okay. And then the driveway on this lot would be on Whithorn, correct? If and when something gets built here?
That is correct. Per the plan they're showing now, that is correct.
Okay. Was any consideration given up till now to the possibility of starting at a point roughly where the current northwest corner point of the house would be, and rotating it maybe 5 to 10 degrees, rotating the whole house to the south and to the west, other than that point, so that the front of the house would be it just seemed to me it would be less intrusive on the southern boundary if that were to happen. And as to the boundary on, wouldn't you know, it's covered up, the word's covered up, it's turn or turn something.
Sure.
What is it? Yes, that, thank you.
So I'm viewing this as the northwest corner of the house?
Yes, if we started at that corner and set a pin there and possibly rotated the southern part of the house or shifted the southern part of the house towards the boundary where the 5-foot building setback line is shown.
In this direction?
Is any thought been given to doing anything like that yet?
No, that there had not been. They may have considered it as part of planning for the lot, but not has been expressed to me.
Okay.
Certainly, would love to consider that. If that's something that would enable folks to be, more satisfied with how this is going to appear and how it's going to look at their subdivision, we're happy to talk to them about that and see if we can't start turning the house in a manner that maybe would better do that, or use a different model even that may be more or less. I don't know what the setback variances might end up being in that instance, but it could potentially, from an appearance standpoint, be more consistent, which would touch on some of the items that we heard about. Sure.
Well, I'm just thinking that would allow for a preservation of the full landscape easement if that was done.
Yeah, and we would plan to do that. That's correct. So yes, that's correct.
And as I understand it right now, you only have a 5-foot building setback line to the west, correct?
That's correct.
So you could shift this whole house 10 or 15 feet further to the west if you chose.
That's correct.
And the reason you would prefer not to do that is what?
It may be because of the orientation of the house next door, but we can look and see how that might impact it and work within that.
Can we get are we able to pull up some video that would show us the house next door?
He's had the overhead that he can put up.
Can we pull the overhead back up possibly?
The aerial? Do you have that?
There was a picture that they had that.
Yes, there you go.
Okay.
So based on that, the driveway is to that side, so there may be an opportunity there. We'd want to look at that.
Okay. All right. Thank you. If anyone else has any questions of the applicant?
Yeah.
I have a question. When this subdivision was brought forward for consideration with the board, with the planning commissioners and the board of commissioners through zoning, when you laid out the plat for approval, you had no variances, correct, with regards to the subdivision?
It was a R20 OSC. So per the OSC ordinance, they would have set the setbacks front, side, and rear at that time.
So when you come in front of the board with your plat, it shows the proper, like each of the home sites that you're going to have throughout the subdivision. Is that correct?
Sometimes.
So
It shows the lots, it may
shows
or
the
may not.
lots.
I just don't-
It
but
shows
could
the
be.
shape size of the lot so that
Of
you're
course.
conforming to the standards
Of course.
of R20. So now you come to having this developed, and there you have kind of two lots, one right now in front of us, that it doesn't conform basically at all. So how does, I'm just asking this question, how does that happen? Because you come in front of the board, you get approved with your lot sizes, and then you have this certain houses that'll fit onto these lot sizes, and now you sort of have this one Outlander right here, which also has, it was Pulte's job to also put in this this nice entrance. So now you've put in the entrance here, which is very pretty, that has also reduced the ability to build this out. So I just, if you could just walk how that happens, how that
Sure.
occurs.
All right, so in this instance, number one, this was not a Pulte application when it was rezoned. So they did not do the zoning of it. Number two, in general, I think sometimes it can happen when the zoning process is distinct from the building of the houses process in a subdivision such as this. And so when, by the time they get to the point of building the houses, the types of houses they're going to build, given the market at any one point in time, and begin going through that, it's honestly, I would think it's something that they just don't look at until they get to a certain point and suddenly look at it and say, okay, wait a second, this lot, these setbacks don't fit it. I don't think that that's a great way for the home building community to do it, but I think that's how it happens. If you're asking me how it happens, I think it happens because they're looking at 100 some odd lot subdivision and they haven't really gotten down to looking at each and every lot and how it's going to actually fit if there's a problematic lot until they realize that there's one that's a problem. So I think it kind of happens that way, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing.
So as you go through and you're building each house, and you see that there could be an issue as you proceed selling the lots and building, did Pulte come back in front of the district commissioner because a lot of times when zoning applications, you come back to the district commissioner when you have issues such as this?
This wouldn't be a district commissioner issue because it dealt with just the setbacks that were set by the zoning of R20 OSC and not a site plan issue.
Okay, my concern is that, you put in a plat, this is what the subdivision's gonna look like. I know that in zoning, they're very restrictive on having variances within a subdivision. And my only question is how this became like this, knowing that you did this really beautiful entrance, which then kind of degrades this property's value. Even somebody, you could put in the loveliest home here, and they're going to have an entrance in their backyard or side yard or however you want to position the house. So that's just my concern and my talk on that. And then I guess down the road, if something has to come in front of us for the one across the street, again, those are just my concerns with this one.
Sure. They're legitimate concerns and opinions. They can always turn to the other option and just build a house that fits in that envelope.
And Pulte has a lot of...
Sure, they can do that. It won't look like the other houses there, but it'll be on a lesser level than the other homes in the subdivision, but they can do that.
We could work through that one as well. Okay, thank you so much.
Sure.
Okay. Anyone else with questions for the applicant? All right. If the community is willing to allow it, are you fine with my having communications with them and with you to try to help arrive at some mutually advantageous solution, if that's possible?
Of course.
Okay.
I'm always open to conversations and dialogue. So.
The reason why I ask here, and I'm less concerned on the Planning Commission, we've been advised at some point that we sit in a quasi-judicial capacity, and that makes me think that somehow we get about half a robe, and I'm still trying to figure out how that looks. But given the fact that this is named after directly or indirectly a member of this group, we want to make sure we come up with the best thing possible.
Understood.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I do have one, Fred, if I might.
Please.
My question to you is the house that Pulte could put on the property, is it fair to assume that Pulte will choose a property that will not impede upon the current property value or diminish the property value that the current homeowners should see?
I could not assume that.
Because when you mentioned a different model that might not be as valuable, I would imagine that would also cause concern to the residences that we should consider.
That's what we're concerned. That's why we're here. So we don't want that to happen.
I have a question too. This is a very nice subdivision. The entry speaks to that, but when you put these two houses up there, are you even going to have a way to put an entrance more than a sign? It looks like you're, particularly on this piece of property that's currently under conversation, you look like you're going almost to the sidewalk.
Not quite, but yes, I mean, there's a landscape easement that the sign and all that landscaping is within, that we ultimately would not be encroaching in that. I know the plan shows that, but we're not going to be able to encroach in that, and we know that. So it's going to be shifted from there regardless.
Ms. Malone, I know that they had a request originally, they had a request originally to hold this, and we wanted to hear it because of the community being here.
Yes.
Were you going to consider moving this?
I was going to turn next to, let's see, Mr. Blond, and ask him a few questions.
Okay.
If that's okay.
That's
Thank you.
absolutely
Thank
fine.
you. So let me start with this. I think you presented a PowerPoint presentation or video presentation that indicated that 69% of the community wanted to have this be green space. 69% of the community did, was that right?
Based off the 135 respondents to the survey earlier this year. Yes, sir.
Okay, and does 69% want to pay fair market value for it or no?
So we've attempted to have that conversation with Pulte.
Right.
We've asked them what their asking price is, and they never gave us one. Just to clarify and correct what the applicant's previous statement, the HOA did not make a written offer to Pulte because of other concerns that they had in the transition agreement with Pulte. Myself, as well as Joni and Aaron Bates across the street, did make a written offer to Pulte. And again, it was, we basically did not get a response until it was stated that it was being applied for variance, and that was about a month ago. So a year plus ago, the first written offer was provided to Pulte with no response.
Okay, so the idea behind making these written offers, however, would be to end up with something that'd be pure green space, not have any structures on it, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So just for your personal knowledge, about 100 years ago, actually 1989, I was president of Lee's Crossing Homeowners Association, and we had a situation where there's a foreclosure by a bank on our developer, and I was the first president once control was turned over by the developer of that HOA, and we ended up buying our clubhouse and the lot and then trading the lot behind the clubhouse for 2 lots at the entranceway with Centex, another builder. So I think things can happen in that regard, but a lot of things have to be put in place to make them happen.
Yes, sir. I think it's important to note on the application of the plat, when I discussed via Mr. Moore directly, I finally got a response from Pulte. I was able to talk to their director of land management, Mr. Steve Gresham. He indicated that they did explore options of different orientations for the house. So they went through the process to see how they could rotate the house to minimize the impact on these setbacks. This was the best one that they found, and they indicated that because they're a national builder, they don't desire to build one of their other floor plans in this neighborhood, and they would instead offer it to a custom builder to attempt to build within this building envelope. So that your point about, well, could this structure be adjusted to better fit the lot? Pulte's director of land management said that they went through that process, and after again all these years, this was the best that they could come up with that they were willing to build. They said they would not build another one of their floor plans from elsewhere in the country.
Do you disagree with that opinion then? You think there's another way to situate it that would be a better result for the neighborhood?
We support if within this building envelope that was approved originally in the zoning for this neighborhood, if there's a house that could be built to the square footage and architectural requirements of the neighborhood within the envelope without encroaching on our, front of the neighborhood sign, that is every right to that builder, whether it's Pulte or a custom builder.
Okay.
We have our own preferences and desires that the HOA, kind of mobilized and wants to pursue. But again, it's been extremely difficult to have a coherent or cohesive conversation with Pulte about that, as well as, again, this lot has been that way since 2016. So.
Did I understand you to say you live in the adjoining house?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So it looks like the tree line backing up to Paul Samuel is within 20 feet of the right-of-way on Paul Samuel. Is that about right?
Correct. We have a very thin backyard, so there's not a lot of room there.
Okay. Well, do you think it'd be more valuable to your community to end up with a product that is completely consistent with what's already in your neighborhood, so long as you could keep your complete landscape easement, but if we had to give a slight encroachment into the setback requirement relative to Paul Samuel?
As our survey results indicated, we believe it's the best for our community to put a green space there.
Well, I understand that. Short of that, and as a board, we have no power to compel that result, all right? So the parameters of my question were, has anybody given thought to whether it's better to have a house that's consistent with the other houses and maintains the landscape buffer, or landscape easement, but maybe provides some relief as to the setback relative to Paul Samuel Road?
So, as was brought up, we're concerned about the precedent set for the lot on the other side of the entrance, as well as my parents in East Cobb purchased a home in a Pulte neighborhood back in 2013. Same situation where they held on to the last lot at the front of the neighborhood because they wanted to, they potentially were going to sell it, after the rest of the neighborhood was built out. They ended up turning it into a green space and gifting it to the HOA. So that option does exist for Pulte. It's happened within this county for my parents' neighborhood. And we would consider, that would be another hearing and, a variance application for these setbacks. It's not preferred for the neighborhood, but we understand if another builder wants to pursue that, we can have this conversation again.
Okay. If anyone else has questions of the gentleman? Okay. Thank you. You can have a seat.
Thank you.
I'll just go ahead and make a motion at this time that we hold this matter for 30 days so we can continue to pursue discussions to seek a win-win if that's possible, or something that does some good for the summer hour property.
Second.
Thank you. You have a motion and a second. Place your votes, please.
With an H.
The motion to hold for 30 days is passed.
One more.
Okay, next case is variance case V111, James M. Croy Jr. Request a variance to number 1, allow a fence to be more than 6 feet in height when in front of or to the side of a residential structure, and the fence is up to 8 feet in height. Number 2, reduce the side setback for an accessory structure over 650 square feet for an existing approximately 725 square foot barn from required 100 feet to 0 feet adjacent to the west property line. Number 3, reduce the side setback for an accessory structure under 650 square feet for an existing approximately 480 square foot shed required 10 feet to 0 feet adjacent to the west property line. And number 4, reduce the front setback required 35 feet to 30 feet, which is existing, in land lots 167, 193, 194 of the 17th district. The property is located on the south side of Lakeshore Drive, south of Hurt Road. Is the applicant present? Yes. The director, so the applicant is here. Is there anyone here opposed to variance case V111? So we got. So you got 4? 5? 5. Okay. Let the record show there's 5 people here opposed to this variance. All those who wish to address the board, please come forward to be sworn in.
I'm James Michael Core Jr. First, I'd like to say that I'm only asking about the fence. All those other things I did not ask for. That was only to just keep the section of the 8-foot fence that's in place on one side, not be 6 foot, just 8 foot. All those other things were not in my application.
Okay, if you can go ahead and continue just giving us some background or
Background?
whatever you
Sure.
want about the fence, and then we'll address the others later.
Okay, sure. I have a 10.5 acre farm, as you can see on the, it's highlighted in yellow right there on the GIS. And the carpenters moved in next to me, being the northwest property there. And there used to be a 100-foot magnolia tree on the property line that the canopy was between the two houses, being on both properties, pretty much separated the front 2 yards. And February 2 years back, came home from Colorado and they had cut it down. The canopy, the root system and all still in place, which, you know, about a month or so later, they grinded all that out, cruiser in my yard and all this kind of thing. So I put a fence up because I've had issues between me and the neighbor of, you know how it is sometimes living next to 7 people and, you know, it gets out of hand. But so I put up a privacy fence. First, I went to zoning and asked them what were the rules exactly, because I had hired the help of Donnie Brewer, you know, a local fence company, worked for the county and all. They said all I do is make sure when I hit the adjacent line of the right-of-way, which is an unusual, as you can see, it's almost as sharp as a cul-de-sac, how sharp the curve is right there. So they said when I hit the adjacent line, it has to be 6 foot. I said, okay, double-checked all that. So we started the construction of the fence, and only if you see the farm fence that is behind my house there, the next house down, right there, that's the change into like true pastures. So where the old 8-foot fence came up the other side by the barns and the shed, I just ran it all the way up to where you see the new driveway on the other side of my home. And then on the carpenter side, being the other side, from the bottom section about where that pasture starts, brought the fence up to the top where it hits the right-of-way. Never even started the construction of the 6-foot section in front of my home, you know. So the next step of overall of that was that I got threats from the neighbor about chainsawing down the fence. Then he actually did it. He chainsawed the first 8 sections between my home and his home. And he's since everything he can do to unleash code enforcement on me in any way, including lots of falsifications. So what I'm asking is, the other side of the neighbor where you can see his new driveway, the 8-foot, there's only 2 boards from the elevation of the road that are actually above 6 feet, 2 boards, because of how fast the hill tapers down. On the other side, there is a little bit more. It's not quite as a 1-to-1 being one, you know, slope, 1 foot over, 1 foot down. On the other side, there's a little flatter at first, but then it tapers off almost at that same speed. Right now, existing, since so much of the fence has been cut down, there's 17 feet from what would be the rear of the home on that curve to where the fence stops now because of the chainsaw down fence. Those are the only boards that would be above and outside of the actual 6-foot section right now. If I took a sawzall and, you know, cut down to 6 feet from the side of the home, you know, it would literally be 17 feet on that one, on one side. Of course, I'm going to put the other fence back after mediation and the lawsuit ends, you know, up back. But anything going back, if you didn't want it to be 8 foot on that last 3, it could be 6 foot, no problem. I just was under the understanding, since I had talked to zoning, that just 6 foot in front. But mainly, I was just trying to, you know, have a barrier fence back around my property. And there's way more in depth about that. But the section we're talking about is just up at the homes. And without the original vegetation and all the hassle I've had with the neighbor, the best idea even Cobb Police offered was, you know, how well a wooden nice fence separates you and your neighbor and keeps peace. I'd say, I guess the last thing I would like to admit is that there is no line of sight in any form way. I work for Pro Engineering. We've gone out and looked at it. We also, multiple other people with the DOT, but because of the curvature of the road and the way the fence comes up the hill, no matter how you stand or anything, you could be way off where the driveway aprons connect, and there would be no line of sight problem ever of turning out from the fence. Even if the fence could be, building high, it wouldn't block your sight because of the way the shape of the road and where my house is located. Thank you for hearing me today.
Thank you. You can have a seat, please.
Yeah. I did, like I said, the only reason I asked for continuancy is because I didn't know that someone had filed actual documentation, and I was wanting to see it before we discussed it.
Thank you.
I have a couple things to file.
If you can introduce yourself in relationship to the case.
Yes. My name is Patrick Dodson. I represent Mr. and Mrs. Carpenter, Gavin and Michelle Carpenter, who are the next door neighbors to the applicant. Thank you for your time today. I will hopefully be brief, but the applicant has, as you know, requested multiple variances. I believe he just stated that the only variance he's seeking today is for the 8-foot fence that he has erected on both sides of his property. If in fact he is withdrawing his request for the other variances, I believe that there were 3 other variances that were sought for what I think are existing structures that are legal non-conforming. I believe that they were built 20, 30, 40 years ago, so they are legal non-conforming. If they have burnt down, I don't believe they have, he would have to come back and get a variance. He doesn't need a variance for where those structures are. But in the event that there's no reason for this board to even rule on those variances requests. So really today, my presentation centers upon the actual request for the 8-foot variance. The first objection that we have today, and we in fact requested a continuance based upon the applicant's failure to meet the procedural requirements for due process for notification to the homeowners for this variance. The Code of Cobb County 13434 directs that posting shall be the same as set forth in section 134, let me go one more. 121B, which I believe is a typo. I think it's referring to 134-121C. And this section deals with my slides are out of order. Excuse me. There we go. So the code, now I did speak with one of the planners from the zoning department, zoning division, which said that, well, technically, procedurally, in a matter of practice, we don't follow this rule exactly. Well, this is the rule that was adopted by the Board of Commissioners for Cobb County. Talks about you have to give notice to those homeowners that live within a 1,000-foot radius. that the notice is supposed to be done 30 days in advance of the hearing. Here it says Planning Commission, but because the prior ordinance directed these to be followed, that would be referring to this board. And that the applicant is required to file the certification of mailing 21 days in advance of the hearing. Again, one of the planning personnel stated that, well, we don't follow this in practice. We believe that it's mandated not just only by the county ordinance, but by the state ZPL, which says you can adopt more stringent requirements, and the county did. If there's an error in the adoption, that's for the county to work out. But even if the county planning department or the zoning department is correct that the 21-day requirement, the 1,000-foot radius notice requirement is not applicable in this situation, the application for the variance states that the applicant must file a certificate of mailing to the contiguous property owners within 14 days. That was not received by I don't believe it was filed, and the notice for the hearing was not provided until 9 days before the hearing. It's postmarked September 29th, I believe. On certified mail, it was sent properly, but it wasn't timely. But those are simply the procedural violations. We believe it's not proper, that if this court's going to rule, if this board's going to rule, they need to push it back and he needs to comply with the procedural requirements. Getting to the meat of the matter on the fence, this is your typical build something that's not in compliance and then come ask for forgiveness later. And that's what he did. He actually tore down my client's chain link fence and erected an 8-foot fence, and it's a spike fence. It's true, there's a boundary dispute. But section 134-267 of the code says, and you know this, you can't build anything larger than a 6-foot fence along the side of the property. And if you want to do that, you have to make a certain showing. You have to show and meet various requirements, which include that there is extraordinary or exceptional conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property because of size, shape, or topography. Well, this is a 10.5-acre piece of property. It is basically a rectangle with not an equal rectangle, but there's nothing atypical about the property. There's nothing unique about the property. There's a gentle slope to the back of the property. And so none of that has been shown in this application. He's just saying, I built a fence, I want to have it approved. The police told me to erect a fence, it'll solve your problems. And that maybe somebody at code enforcement said you can build an 8-foot fence or whatever. But that would remain to be seen. Also, the applicant must show that failure of the board to grant the variance is an unnecessary hardship. Well, there's no hardship here. He created his own hardship by building an 8-foot fence. He could have built a 6-foot fence and we wouldn't be here today, but for the other primary issue that there is currently a lawsuit in Cobb Superior Court on a quiet title action because our client has a survey, has a deed, other surveys from other neighbors support that the applicant built his fence on my client's property. If you approve the variance today or at any other point, you are authorizing a taking of my client's property, which is this boundary dispute will be decided by the court in Cobb County. But for reference, the applicant claims that the pink stake is the accurate stake for the property line. There's a yellow stake on the other side of the property line, on the right side of the picture, which is our client's survey stake. Now, there have been other surveys done, not just our client's survey, not just our client's deeds. There have been other neighbors that have done surveys. All of these surveys, all of the records, the land records that we provided to this board support our client's position that this fence is on our client's property and it's a taking. There is one survey that suggests that the property line is where the pink stake is. That survey was done by the applicant's father's, the founding father of the engineering company that did the survey. There is an email that we provided to the board from one of the engineering company's individuals who were working on another plat that says, if we take their pins and the other data, then the carpenter's survey appears to be accurate. We are working on a new plat and survey. We also provided that to you, which supports again that this fence is on our client's property. There is also a pending case in Cobb County Magistrate Court against the applicant for removing a survey pin. Not a survey stake, but a survey pin. There is video that we sent you where he is pulling out
1 minute.
a survey pin. That is yet to be decided, but it's pending in magistrate court, and the court will rule how it will rule. It is a misdemeanor if it's established by beyond all reasonable doubt. But so for these reasons, the board, I believe, should deny this request. But at the worst, should continue this until such time as the Superior Court rules on this, which I don't know when it'll be. It could be 6 months, it could be a year. Thank you for your time. I believe there's one gentleman that wants to speak, and I thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Do we need to get?
Madam Chair, we have 21 seconds left. If the board desires, I can just let him go over by a little timing.
I'll be quick enough. No extension needed. I live at 3576 Lakeshore Drive. I've lived there for 24 years. I don't see a need for a privacy fence at all, except the neighbors don't get along, but 8 foot would be just a safety hazard. Coming westbound, you won't see people egressing out of the two properties. Coming eastbound, there are 4 affected properties where you would be surprised by even a tall vehicle that is backing out as you're driving down Lakeshore Drive. So it presents an unnecessary safety hazard and really is an unnecessary variance. And that's all.
Thank you.
Time has expired, and he went over by about 20 seconds.
Okay. Yeah. We need, if the applicant has anything else to say, we have 20 seconds.
There's a lot of things that the attorney brought up that aren't necessarily true, but that's why we're in a lawsuit in regular court about it. Like the pin itself from 1957, that's 8 inches underground, that matches the rest of the neighborhood, and that all the surveys that he discussed, except for the one that we have for my property that was done when I moved in, the ones before it in 2010 by the same company he just used, match, all my deeds match.
Time has expired.
Their deeds do not match a single.
Okay. All right. Understood. All right. Please be seated.
The extra time has expired.
Yeah. Demetra?
Does any of the fellow board members have any questions or concerns of the applicant or the opposition?
Mac, I just want to, because we're looking at several variance requests, I just want to have Mr. Peterson or someone validate exactly what the variance is that we're working with.
So apparently he has dropped. Mr. Corey, can you come up for just 1 second? Let me ask you a question just for clarification for record.
Yes. May I say something before you start requesting?
Absolutely.
You know, it's true that Mr. Croy did not ask for the other 3 variances, but when someone submits a variance to our office, we always look at the entire property. If there's something that's not compliant, we put it into the variance since you're at this point anyway.
Okay, I got you.
So that's why we did it, because those other three things are non-conforming uses.
Yeah, I mean, either the neighborhood, I mean, my house is the part of the original barn that's prior to it was built in like the 40s or something, you know? So the barns and all that stuff that are from like the 50s. I mean, I understand what you're saying, that you put it in there, but I did not request anything but the fence.
Okay.
That is correct.
So you are clear now that the existing structures will need the variance that 2, 3, and 4 highlights?
They're grandfathered because of the time that they were built.
They are not grandfathered in, but that is something that we will consider in this variance request. Are you okay with that?
That the structures that I bought my
That
home
the
under?
2, 3, and 4, that the setbacks are adjusted for
Could you
those
pull that-
existing structures?
Would you mind if he pulls back it up? Sure. So I can,
And we do this on many cases when we discover other points, we include the variances, so we've kind of quote unquote cleaned up any non.
well, I want to be 100% in
Compliance.
in y'all's compliance,
It's like- it's
100%.
just cleaning everything up so
I
that
just
it
was
all
trying
meets
to
the
see what
requirements.
all three were exactly. I guess the two structures you're talking about reduce, what's the third one? Reduce the setback size of the structure under,
Yeah. So in the backyard, there is a barn and a shed. And according to tax records, both were built in 1960. The house was built in 1987.
Yeah.
And according to your survey, it's a little bit too close to the front setback. So you're
The house
required to
is?
have a 35-foot front, and it's at 30 feet right now.
no, it's, the front of the garage is dead on 35.
The survey's showing it at 30 feet.
I mean, I have the survey with me. I have the last two surveys with it, but front of the garage is right from the curve of it's dead on 35 of the one little corner that comes out. Now, I know a lot of the changes that were renovated by the neighbors, I mean, there's a lot of setback issues of those same things that are concerned, but the house that I bought under, and I haven't renovated or changed my home since I've been living there 4 years or so, and the same setback that it was in, 87 when they built it and was approved, that still exists right now is, I mean, it's dead on 35 feet. It's the closest point of the house. Would you like to, you want me to pull the survey?
What we'll do is, we will rely on the county records for this hearing and moving forward. But thank you, you can have
But
a
yeah,
seat.
no, to answer your question, yes, I understand.
Understood. If you can have a seat for me, that would be
Sure,
great.
sure,
Awesome, thank
sure.
you. All right, I am ready to make a motion unless anyone else have any questions or concerns for the applicant or the opposition. So in light of your understanding, my motion is, and in light of all the testimonies that have been submitted and the emails that we have received from multiple neighbors in the area, my motion is to deny number 1 of this variance request relating to the fence and approve 2, 3, and 4 as the county was able to indicate for the existing structures.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Ready to place it?
Actually, for just discussion briefly, I think what we need to do is to clarify whether the opponent objects to the variance requests other than those concerning the fence. Because he raised a procedural point that the hearing was improper for due process reasons because they didn't receive notice on a timely basis. You can maybe get opinion of our counsel, and I apologize for playing lawyer sometimes, but.
Sometimes.
Yeah, and I'll address what the counsel for the opposition stated. He did bring up section 134, which is the requirements for a variance application. And one of the requirements of the variance application for posting is to follow that code section that's in the zoning code for rezoning applications. And that just applies to the posting only. And that, in that section it says the sign has to be posted 30 days prior to the hearing in front of the house and not obscured by any bushes or trees or things like that. It doesn't address the mailing requirement. It says posting only. So in my opinion, they met the posting requirement. You know, there is a requirement in the variance application that states that they have to send a letter out to the adjoining neighbors if they can't get them to sign a petition 2 weeks prior to the hearing. But that's a requirement that was put in there by the staff. It wasn't in the county code. So the mailing requirement is to really, it's put in there to notify folks who may not drive by the property on a daily basis, like someone behind you that may not see it. But, you know, it's apparent to me that the next door neighbor who's opposed was aware of the variance request.
Are we, Mr. Johnson, are we good with the motion?
The motion's in the discretion of the board, but I would rely upon what Mr. Peterson has.
I can't hear you.
You can't hear me?
No, I can't hear. It's usually my fault. Say,
So your question was, are you okay with the motion?
yeah, everything's the way it should be, right?
I believe so, unless he wants to restate it or the clerk recite it, but I mean, I believe so.
Yeah.
And of course, the motion is in the discretion of, the contents of the motion is in the discretion of the board.
Could we state what number 1 is? So-
Yes. So number 1 is, so let me just restate the motion. That way we'll have it clear on record. So my motion is to deny number 1 of the variance request relating to the fence and approve 2, 3, and 4 as related to the existing structures.
Second.
My second remains valid. Thanks.
Oh, you seconded, that's right.
All right.
Sure.
We place our votes. Okay. The motion passes 4-1. Thank you. We now have some housekeeping to take care of. Y'all have your minutes in front of you from the September 13th Board of Zoning Appeals. Do I have a motion for approval?
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second? Do I have a second to the minutes?
Second.
All in favor? Minutes approved, 5-0 from the September 13th meeting. Now, we need to approve the minutes from special called meeting on October 9th. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion to approve.
Do I have a second, please?
Second.
Second. Place your votes. Minutes approved, 5-0. Now, do I have a motion for adjournment?
Anybody?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, vote. All right, thank you. We are adjourned.